What happened that destroyed a wedding without warning? Well, I wasn't born at the time, but my parents rented the observation deck on the Hancock Building in Boston for their reception. Tallest building in the city, beautiful view. My dad pored over historic weather charts to figure out what day was statistically most likely to be nice out. Day of the wedding comes, and of course, thick fog unlike anything they'd ever seen before. Couldn't see a thing out of the windows of the room they'd picked specifically for the view. It worked out well though. They were happily married for nearly 30 years before illness took my dad a few years ago. There's one other funny anecdote to that wedding though. The wedding was held in King's Chapel, which is an incredibly historic church in downtown Boston that's something of a major tourist attraction. Turns out it wasn't even that expensive to close it for one afternoon for a wedding. The tourists waiting outside the church didn't know that though, and someone started the rumor that my parents were incredibly wealthy, maybe even Kennedys. As a result, there were tons of people taking photos of them when they left the ceremony. Not sure if any of them ever figured out that my parents most certainly were not rich or famous. When I was 6 or 7, I went to a cousin's wedding. Everything was fabulous for little old me, so much sugar everywhere, basically heaven. The reception was in a big community center that was reserved for the occasion. Went to the girls' bathroom, passing by the men's room to see my uncle on the dance floor. Went back to the main room to tell my dad my uncle was looking weird. Well, turns out uncle had had a stroke and died. The bride spent the rest of the afternoon crying, and everyone except close family left. Bright side is the marriage is still going strong 20 years later, despite what happened that day. Leading up to my friend's wedding, his father had been battling cancer after a terminal diagnosis, and it was touch and go whether he'd be well enough to attend the wedding. In the end, he was too unwell to attend, despite wishing that he could. Just as we got to the reception, my friend was informed that his father had just passed away. It was devastating. I played a wedding where, as we started playing the set, everyone ran outside and nobody was anywhere to be seen for the rest of the night. I originally assumed it was just because nobody liked the band, us. But the bride came in afterwards and said there was a huge fight involving multiple members of both families and everyone basically went home upset, injured, or in a police van. We couldn't stop playing since we were paid and it was our job, and the only person watching was the drunk uncle dancing on his own, asking for requests that we didn't know. The drunk uncle dancing by himself all night sounds like something that would happen at a Sims wedding. It does indeed sound like something from The Sims, but as an old-hand hospitality worker, let me tell you that this is one of those points where The Sims is eerily realistic. At the end of any given party, there's always one guy on the dance floor. My dad and stepmom's wedding was a crap show. For context, her family was terrible on both sides. She had an angry, violent father, neglectful alcoholic mother, and step-parents who didn't care about her much. She basically ran to my father to get away from it all when she was 15. Bigger problem was, my dad was 26, also a violent bully, and just a real frickin' crap show of a person. On my father's side of things, he hated his mother and blamed everything wrong in his life on her, as he did to most women in his family, later doing it to the same stepmom we're talking about. So the wedding was doomed to just be awful. It started when my stepmom was just walking down the aisle. She'd reconnected with her father in the last year and had recently been in a fight with her stepfather, so it was just her dad walking her. There was a branch in the way, it was an outdoor wedding, but he pulled it out of the way for her. As she thanks him, he lets go and flings it back into her face and collapses laughing. She awkwardly chuckles, no doubt knowing he's going to get mad at her if she shows she's upset, and the day continues, but she's visibly upset after. After the toasts, some people didn't drink the champagne that had been set out. The one thing she had asked of her mum was that she not drink. Her mum was even given sparkling juice rather than champagne. So while stepmom is changing into her reception dress, her mum goes table to table pounding down all the alcohol she can get her hands on. A cousin of mine who doesn't know what's happening starts chanting, "Chug, chug, chug, chug." And then my poor stepmom walks back into the room to see her mother downing the last drink and then denying she had done it. My cousin slips out of the tent once he realizes what's going on and leaves the two alone to argue. Stepmom comes out crying a few minutes later, goes back to her car and doesn't come back for a good 20 minutes. While all of that's happening, Grandma pulls up and starts cursing out my dad for a ton of crap, including marrying a kid who she hates, and by the way, my stepmom was only a year younger than my dad at the time, then complaining about people not letting her invite a friend to the wedding, and then Dad owing Grandma a bunch of money. Dad tells her to F off and she leaves. Then my dad got mad at my stepmom for being gone so long, accused her of either being a baby for crying or lying and cheating on him. So she sat down on the fringes and tried not to cry and also remain visible to my dad for the next several hours. They might have been dating for 10 years, but the marriage only lasted 6 months. I've catered many weddings, and there have been some memorable ones, I can tell you. Fights between guests, wedding cakes falling over, red wine spilt on wedding dresses, the lot. The one I'll never forget, it was an all-day do with a small ceremony, a few close friends and family, with a big reception filled with a huge buffet, every kind of food you could imagine, and free bar. All in the same venue. They'd booked and paid for 250 evening guests, but 30 guests turned up at most. My heart broke for this couple. A massive, beautiful converted barn, loads of food and drink, great music, but no guests. At about 10 p.m., the venue was licensed until 11, the buffet food had barely been touched, the few people who were there ate, but it hardly made a dent as it was planned for so many more people. I asked the mother of the bride if she wanted me to cover and refrigerate the untouched food so the new couple could take it home, and her response of, "Oh no, there are still a lot of people coming," was the most awkward I've ever felt in my life. No more guests showed up. There was a flash of car headlights in the distance at about 10:30, and the bride beamed when she thought it was latecomers arriving. But no, it was just the taxis arriving to pick up the few who were there. It's the only event I've ever done where we didn't have to kick people out of the venue. At 11 p.m., the place was empty. In a nutshell, bride's parents paid for the day, and the happy couple had zero control over their guests list. Her parents had invited all of their friends to the evening function, but in reality, it was just associates they wanted to flex on, resulting in no one giving a crap about an invite to a wedding where they didn't know the bride or groom. It was basically just a networking event for the bride's parents. I used to do catering work, and this one time my boss sent me to a remote location in the woods that was a beautiful river. I found out while we were loading the truck that the boss wouldn't be going and that I was essentially in charge. My boss promised that everything was taken care of and set up, so you can imagine my surprise when I arrived to this remote location and literally nothing was set up. We were only about an hour early, so I frantically started trying to get the tent in order. We needed extension cords to run the coffee and tea, and there were none. We needed tables to set up the food, and there were none of those either. I somehow whipped up an impromptu everything for the missing things, just as the bride and groom were arriving. We blew the fuse for our only power source, and the place was plunged into darkness. We reset the breaker, I moved some stuff around, and blew the fuse again. This delicate dance went on for the entire evening, through speeches, the first dance, the works. I think the worst part of the entire experience was when we went to rinse our dishes before boxing them up and found out that when we blew the fuses, the water pump for the place stopped working and needed to be primed again. At that point I said, forget about it, we'll take them back dirty, and the crew and I spent several more hours after the long ride home doing the dishes. That was the day I worked a 15-hour shift without a break and still ruined the wedding. Needless to say, I quit that job. The mother of the groom was an alcoholic for many years. She decided to quit drinking cold turkey a few days before the wedding. During the reception, she had a seizure and was taken to the hospital via ambulance. My God, a great resolution and gesture gone horribly wrong. That sucks for everyone. Maybe get specialist advice before you make a radical lifestyle change like this, folks? Although I can't point the finger, I wouldn't have guessed that that would happen. I was best man at my sister-in-law's wedding. I'd stepped in for the brother of the groom. That's another story entirely. For a whole year of planning, all the bride, my sister-in-law, wanted was a dove release when they said handwritten vows to each other. Very small, non-denominational wedding. Most of the family were atheists. Day arrives, it was early summer, and something was off with the bird handlers. They showed up a bit late and were sourcing help from the wedding party to get everything in line. When the time comes to say their vows, I help the handler carry the chest with the doves in it over to what is to be the altar where the bride and the groom are standing. The vows are just about wrapping up and the handler gives me the signal to open the chest. I open it and see 20 to 30 dead doves in the crate. I immediately close it to try and limit who knows what happened, but too late. The look of horror on the bride's face was all that I needed. We spent the next few hours trying to cheer everyone up, but by the end of the reception, the entire wedding party had organized and filed animal cruelty complaints on the handler. It was all anyone could focus on. The wedding was at a state park that's famous for its giant gorge and waterfall. I don't know whose idea this was, but someone suggested a photo overlooking this gorge and everyone was game. The wedding party went around a stone security barrier and the maid of honor literally fell off the cliff to her death. It was like 500 feet. I attended a wedding reception and was seated near the cameraman. An aunt of mine was sitting closer to the camera and spent the evening commenting and gossiping about everyone, and much of it came out on the video. The cameraman was great, he did 2 copies, one edited and the other no holds barred. The unedited version is the stuff of legend. Release the Ant Snyder cut, or actually the Snide Ant cut. Nobody turned up to the reception except myself and my partner. There were about 8 people there in total, and the couple had gone all out for it. It was so awkward. I was a guest of a friend of the bride. I didn't know anyone attending. Very expensive, over-the-top place, several hundred guests in this very Italian wedding. The maid of honor grabbed the mic at the cocktail hour, began her speech, rambling and drunk, quickly devolved into stating the recently deceased mother of the bride was against this wedding and that that's basically what had killed her. Plus, Vinny will never give up his working girl habit. She was finally tackled by several people and dragged away. The happy couple is separated and divorced within a year. Mamma mia. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The bride's father was 45 minutes late to walk his daughter down the aisle. While we were waiting, the air conditioning broke in the venue. It was over 100 degrees outside and humid as frick. The place was overcrowded, you could barely move without bumping into someone else, and the heat was extra miserable. I guess the air conditioning problem had also affected the refrigeration or something because most of the food was spoiled. The only food on the buffet was salad, spaghetti, and rolls. Not enough to even feed half the guests. Most people left after the first dance, and 2 of the bride's aunts fainted. The bride and the wedding planner were crying. When the wedding planner is crying, you know the day has spiraled out of control. I feel bad for laughing, but man, that's so true. I'd say that's a rare occasion for a wedding planner. The groom got so drunk the night before he couldn't make it to the altar at the ceremony. They still had the ceremony with only the bride and her party, plus the one groomsman who apparently didn't get wasted. Everyone was shaking their heads the entire time. The groom did make a singular appearance for a few seconds at the reception. He looked like a zombie and was wearing street clothes. And this was no trashy wedding, by the way. The bride was a professional dancer for a major label pop star, so that gives you the idea of the kinds of people that were in attendance. 200 plus people at the ceremony alone, probably double that at the reception. They divorced within 6 months. The father of the bride died suddenly 3 days before the wedding, pre-COVID. Daddy-daughter dance was mum, bride, and picture of dad. Same with walking down the aisle to give her away. Lots of tears, not many smiles. Even the bartender at the hotel knew the night before and was talking about it with me. It was a big wedding, over 300 people. Turns out the bride had been having an affair with her cousin's husband. The cousin had known for a little bit, but waited until the wedding to go table to table, letting everyone know the bride was sleeping with her husband. Poor groom was blindsided. Worst part was his father-in-law was well off and opened up a restaurant for him. Well, he lost his wife and the restaurant. You know, the narrator was expecting a lot more of the stories in question to be about affairs. Nope, we've mostly just had a lot of honest-to-God unavoidable tragedies, some real act-of-God type things, or just horrible people in general. So thank you for this last story. We needed more scarcely believable infidelity to make this all a bit more surreal for us. But yes, it does have to be said that this sucks for the groom. Best friend's mom got remarried and had an expensive, beautiful wedding, but for some reason didn't hire a DJ. At the last minute, her mum asked me to manage the CD and gave me a list along with verbal instructions of when to play each thing. I tried to warn her that I simply didn't follow, but she told me she had confidence in me. Apparently, all her life she had wanted to walk down the aisle to some specific song, but I just couldn't figure it out. They had to get walking to match the sunset, so she went ahead down the aisle while I flipped through a series of incorrect songs to the horror and amusement of the crowd. Years afterwards, when I called my friend's house and her stepdad answered, he'd say, "Oh, is this the guy who screwed up my wedding? How are you?" I work at a golf course with a lot of history behind it. We do wedding venues inside the clubhouse, and the actual ceremony is held outside by the historic water fountain and a large pond. The first problem was the weather. I live in a high desert and it's very warm. A solid 90 degrees that day, and it was also pretty windy. So everyone was outside, no umbrellas and no ease-ups. The next problem, and probably the worst, was the golf cart incident. The bride and groom wanted to ride into the sunset on one of our golf carts. Drive around a little bit on the course. To be fair, it's beautiful on the course during sunset. However, the cart had somehow gotten a nail in the tire went flat, the battery on the cart went crazy, and the cart ended up freaking out. It came to a complete stop from 15 miles per hour to 0. The wheels and mechanism locked up, almost seizing. Both the bride and groom, fairly overweight mind you, went over the windscreen and rolled over a few times. They were totally okay, just a few bruises, including the ones on their egos. So retrieving the cart wasn't fun. And last but not least, the power inside the clubhouse went out due to high winds. There was no after-party available. After the cake was cut, hardly any food was given out. Yeah, not a great day to cover for someone on your day off. This was one I worked at. After the ceremony, right at the start of the reception, the photographer was taking jumping photos of the bride and bridesmaids, so they were all jumping in the air while wearing heels. You know where this is going. The bride landed and dislocated her knee, then passed out and kept going in and out of consciousness. We called an ambulance who turned up and fixed her knee, but she wanted to continue with the wedding. She then had the first course of the meal and then threw up down her dress and had to sit with her mum in another room while everyone else danced. I felt so bad for her as she spent the rest of the evening crying. I went to a wedding where the bride and groom brought the wedding package on Groupon, which is fine. Why spend a fortune on one day? But I guess the venue thought they could cut some corners too. So they stuck us in a room that smelled so strongly of cat pee that some people immediately left. The only drinks were those from a vending machine. It was next to an airport, so every time a plane took off, the ceremony had to be paused because you couldn't hear anything. And the day after the event, every single one of us had food poisoning. And a bonus story, because even though it didn't ruin the wedding for the couple, it ruined it for the bridal party. I was a bridesmaid for my other friend. I flew across the world for over 10 hours to be there. I had to do the setup of the venue, assign people to rooms, put signs on doors, finish the seating chart, transport food, redo her bouquet because she didn't like it. A long, long list. The whole time she was rude and telling everyone within earshot that the bridesmaids just aren't helping me. Her maid of honor was absolutely bending over backwards to keep her happy, and instead of being grateful, she instead told her sister, "I should have asked you to be my maid of honor instead." She was pretty cold to me and kept asking if I'd lost weight. I said yes because I'd been ill, but I didn't think much of it. At the reception, her new husband took the opportunity to read the speech she clearly wrote for him to say to me, "We're so glad you fit into your dress," in front of over 100 people. I don't speak to her anymore, and neither does her maid of honor or any of her other bridesmaids. We attended a wedding for family members who didn't have a lot of money. It was hosted at an inexpensive venue, but it was nice. My heart broke when only a third of the people invited showed up. You could see the hurt in the couple's face. They came up to our table and said, "Do you have any friends in the city we lived in an hour away?" They had all this food for 100 people, but only 30 guests. They were willing to have complete strangers come down just so their money and food wouldn't go to waste. We hadn't handed over our card with cash inside yet, so my husband hit the ATM and added another $100. Maybe not ruined, but it definitely got tense. Started with the best man and groom's brother just absolutely roasting the bride and her parents. Basically called them gold diggers and stuff in front of several hundred family and friends. Then they cut the cake. Apparently the groom was told under no uncertain terms not to shove the cake in her face. Well, he did it anyway and she stormed off, not to be seen for 20 minutes. The reception went on as planned, she got wasted, and I'm told she passed out that night in the middle of the street while still in her wedding dress. Pure class. They're divorced now. This is the tale of my elder cousin. He attended a wedding where the bride and groom got scammed by the wedding organizer. 1 hour before the wedding event, there was nothing in the room. No food, no decorations, just a few tables, and basically it felt like an unused ballroom. The bride and groom realized the wedding organizer scammed them, and the wedding organizer took the money to buy themselves a big old house. When the bride and groom decided to see the wedding organizer, they caught him sleeping in his house. It became national TV news here, and the wedding organizer got sued by a few brides and grooms that got scammed by them too. Well, at least this had something of a wider spread happy ending. People who take advantage of an event like this and then run away and leave the bride and groom who've likely blown their entire savings are just absolute monsters. I was invited to the reception of one of my good friends. They'd been courthouse married for months and living happily. When I arrived at the location and saw the big crowd, I knew something was wrong. My friend's wife is prone to panic attacks and is extremely agoraphobic to the point of breaking down and crying if she's overwhelmed. I immediately called my friend and asked what's going on and if this was okay. Turns out my friend's parents invited everyone possible to be there without my friend knowing. After I sent him a picture of the crowd, he and his wife thought it would be better to go on a second honeymoon than have a reception. He sent a message apologizing to all those he and his wife had invited and told them to leave without telling his parents. They, of course, had a meltdown as we left. This was around 2009. On the second day of the wedding, the bride went swimming in the ocean. It took place in Tenerife. She swam out too far and was basically lost at sea for 9 hours or so. She eventually found her way back but was in bad shape. Everyone was panicked the whole day and thought she drowned. By the time she got back, she wished she had. Her husband found her phone and read a bunch of messages supposedly from her aunt, but it was very clear from the racy content that it wasn't her aunt at all. She'd been having an affair with the best man for apparently years. They got an annulment shortly after, $60,000 down the drain, one of the most opulent weddings I've ever been to. A fight broke out between the father of the bride, brother of the bride, and some guy that just happened to be staying at the hotel. In reality, I don't know how much of a fight it was, more just the dad and brother beating up some guy. So anyway, they were both arrested. Cut to the bride sobbing at breakfast because her dad and brother spent the evening of her wedding in jail and now faced charges for what they did to this poor man. Hurricane Ivan. Our wedding was scheduled for Friday and the hurricane hit us dead center on Thursday. We were sitting around with no power on Friday and remembered that a neighbor was a pastor. So my partner and I just knocked on his front door and asked if he'd just marry us in the front yard. So the big church wedding was cancelled, but instead I got married in the front yard with chainsaws and stuff in the background. Been married for 17 years now. The groom's father got handsy with both the bride and his daughter, my then girlfriend, multiple times each. Ended up getting punched out by his son and locked in a minivan for a few hours until he sobered up.
Doctors, what do patients do that annoy you? I don't like when a patient gets a full workup and their lab work and imaging is completely normal and the patient gets enraged. They don't know what's wrong with me. I'm going to XYZ hospital instead. When they literally can't understand how they are harming themselves. For example, my mom once said that a woman who smoked while pregnant couldn't accept that she was harming the baby. The conversation went something like this. The baby is underdeveloped for its age due to you smoking. So she's sick? In a way, yes. So when will I get some antibiotics for my baby? It doesn't work that way, ma'am. You're making her sick by smoking. But aside from that, she's fine, right? And so on and so on. When a patient is admitted and on their second day, they say, "Hey doc, I feel better now. Can I go home?" Yeah, no, you go home when I say you go home because feeling better does not mean you are 100% well. Technically, patients can leave whenever they want, but if you want to be discharged with the minimum risk of ending right back in the ER, please listen to your doctor. We don't want you to stay any longer than what's needed, trust us. So even if you say, "Can I go home?" in a joking manner, the fake laugh and strange smile of the doctor in response is proof enough that we've heard that so many times before and we'd like you to stop. As an American, complain about pain. In the gosh darn awesome US of A, we fix things. Everything. It's this ethos that also permeates into how Americans deal with issues of their health. It is completely unacceptable to be in pain at any point in time. Placing IVs to deliver medication has to get local anesthetic. Simple wrist fracture gets diluted IV, one of the most potent IV pain meds available, in addition to local anesthetic and an oral pain medication. Immediately post-op from lumbar spinal fusion, why does my back hurt? After being in a car accident while driving drunk and only sustaining a tibial fracture and just had it fixed? Doc, I'm just in too much pain to leave. Sitting comfortably in bed eating delivery surrounded by friends reeking of weed. You know, I get it might be annoying, but sometimes when people are just openly complaining about things, it is kind of therapeutic. It makes them feel better. Not a doctor, but an ER scribe. Patients that mumble and patients that can't give a coherent history. Also, when a patient rates their pain as a 10 out of 10 in tri-age, but they're chilling and playing games on their phone when we go to see them. On one hand, there's probably not much else to do when you're in the ER. On the other hand, I do hate it as well when people are just obsessed with their phones. I would probably rather it if they were playing on a Nintendo Switch or something. Like, the thing I hate about it most is when someone is just scrolling through Instagram or Facebook or what have you for like, I don't know, an hour while having a conversation with them, and then they're like, "Oh, you get on my case for it, but you do it too." It's like, no, I'm actually communicating with someone on the other side of this thing. My friend's dad is a doctor who works in the ER. He complains daily about how he wishes he wouldn't save most of these drunk, overweight morons who don't contribute anything to society, and complains about how he feels bad for doing his job, which is actively working against Mother Nature's careful elimination of the unfit. I think maybe it would be in your friend's father's best interest if he got a different job. I've worked in an ER for the last 4 years. I work very closely with many doctors. When I come into the ER, anything that isn't life-threatening because your doctor can't see you, You're a moron and waited till the last minute. You have crap insurance that no one but an ER will take, but you don't have primary care doctor, etc., etc., etc. Are we going to see you? Yes. Are we going to be polite and professional? Yes. Does the hospital business model exist assuming that there will be so many thousands of clinic-type patients in the ER? Yes. But goddammit, are we going to be annoyed that you are taking precious time away from sick patients, delaying triage and rooming time for sick patients, or just annoyed at you in general? Yes. Good rule of thumb. If your problem can wait till tomorrow, it does not belong in an ER. I've actually witnessed that. I think it was this like Muslim lady or something, like a hijab and stuff, and she came into like the A&E and she seemed fine, and she just kind of came up to the desk when there's people like bleeding with like really bad stuff going on with them and goes, "My finger hurt." And I kid you not, this little girl like a twisted up arm who was crying a moment ago like stopped and like looked at this woman like, "You don't belong here, honey." Not a doctor, but my brother is. He tells me he gets very annoyed by most of his diabetes patients. Many of them never take care of their health. They drink soda and eat BS all the time, and they do not exercise. Of course, they get really surprised when they see their sugar test results. "I'm sorry, doctor, but I love chocolate so much." My mother is a nurse, so she has a full list. First off, she hates people who sue. She hates them because 90% of the time, the doctor is doing their best, and it would be ridiculous to sue. But then they turn around and straight up sue the doctors. This causes the doctors to have to run a bunch of unnecessary tests, which not only waste yours and the doctor's time, but it ramps up your hospital bill. This in turn causes the lower class stress, because then they can't afford going to the hospital. If everyone just agreed to not sue, then the hospital bills would be much more affordable, which would make everybody, except the buttholes who sue, happier. Her second hated thing is the mean homeless drunks who come in because they have nowhere else to go, and then they are spitting and trying to fight the nurses because they are so messed up on God knows what. I'm just going to say I have no idea how accurate any of this is. In America, is it like a common thing for people to threaten to sue their doctors? I'm an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. Patients who start crying make me feel as if they're my victims, even though I'm on their side. From my father, ER repeat visitors with new objects stuck in their butt, and from my sister, an ICU nurse, parents that don't come in for newborn bonding time. ER nurse here. I hate when patients tell me the diagnosis that they think they have instead of their symptoms. Might as well Google the meds for it and go straight to asking the pharmacist for them and bypass emergency, dude. In so much pain, constantly asking for more painkillers. On physical examination, shouts out when touched and unable to do much movement. Miraculously manages to heal completely to get up and go out for a cigarette break on the hour every hour. Let's be honest, people that smoke cigarettes can be the most annoying people in just about every setting, especially work. I used to do laboring, and I remember we got this one really freaking fat guy come in one time for the job. Only stayed a day. I'm having trouble carrying a load, and I ask him for some help, and he just goes to me, "Oh, I'm going for my cigarette break." It was like, you had one like 20 minutes ago. It's like, "Yeah, I'm going for another." "Well, can you help me with this while we're going down together?" And he's like, "No, I'm on my break." I hate working with people who smoke. Comes in for a cold. "I know my body. Antibiotics are the only thing that helps. I need an antibiotic and I'm not leaving until I get one." Okay, I admittedly did this once with my dentist because they were like, "I'm going to pull your wisdom teeth out because they're giving you abscesses." And I said, "Well, you're going to keep on giving me antibiotics because I'm not going to let you pull my wisdom teeth out." And I feel like I was kind of right to do that in all honesty, because like they haven't given me an abscess ever since. Not going to dialysis because you don't feel well. Usually the cause of not feeling well is because you skipped your last dialysis appointment, Karen. There was no mention of a Karen, I just thought it sounded funnier that way. This happens all the time. Do you have any pre-existing conditions? No, I'm very, very healthy. Do you take any medication? Oh, yes, I take this for my blood pressure, this for my blood sugar, this for my MI heart, this for my thyroid, etc., etc., etc. If you want a professional to listen to all of your personal problems, go to an office with a psychotherapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, LCSW, or counselor on their sign and nothing else. Your podiatrist, dentist, or optometrist knows next to nothing about mental health and certainly isn't qualified to treat it. Neither is an otolaryngologist, a gynecologist, or a thoracic surgeon. Honestly, family physicians who have only the slightest training in mental health yet do the majority of prescribing of psychotropic medication in the US really are only a stopgap solution, and in best practice wouldn't be allowed to prescribe those meds at all. Ditto times 2 for psychiatric nurses and PAs. Could you tell that some of those words were making me slip up? Not a doctor, but a pharmacist, and I get this a lot. A patient comes medicine. I have a 2-year-old with a runny nose and I found this homeopathic remedy that doesn't actually have any medicine in it. Is this a good choice? Well, there's no evidence to suggest that this product is effective, but this Claritin or Zyrtec is not only cheaper, it has real medicine in it that has been clinically proven to help manage allergy-type symptoms including runny noses, and is labeled to be appropriate for children this young. No thanks, I'll just give him this other crap instead after wasting 10 minutes of your valuable time against your professional advice.
As a psychologist, DNAs did not attend. I find it really difficult to do other work while waiting to see if my patient has come. All the prep and supervision time also feels wasteful, although they are part of the work because avoidance is hugely common in everything.
My mother has worked as a biller for a doctor's office, gastroenterologist, for years. Some of the ones she comes home complaining about include, but not limited to, people telling her about their symptoms. She's not a doctor, please save this for him. Calling to complain about how much an office visit costs. Yes, even if it is $20, she does not control this. There is not anything she can do about it. Bringing in stool samples to show her, yes, it really happens. That poor, poor woman. As a doctor, I really have to add in that a lot of these comments bother me. The last thing the big portion of these patients need is another reason to be scared of going to the doctor, or personal judgment from the doctor. If the patient came in with what you consider a low-level reason, take the time to educate. That is at least half the reason any patient is there, and they can appreciate it. Ask yourselves if you enjoy going for medical and dental visits yourself. I don't. It can be a vaguely embarrassing, invasive, humbling experience, though I do appreciate the value of being educated again of what it's like to be a patient. While I don't see it often, there is one thing that annoys me about patients, though. I wouldn't express it to them. Anyone who defends cigarette use as something more natural and relatively innocuous. I had the aunt of a pregnant teenage patient rhetorically ask me if quitting smoking would cause a shock for the baby and therefore be harmful for the pregnancy. It was clear from the tone that she thought the girl should continue to smoke. Another wanted only natural medications and vitamins during the pregnancy. No vaccines, fully natural childbirth with no cord cutting, all of which I am fine with for the record, but continued to smoke half PPD during the pregnancy. To all smoking, pregnant, and preconceptual patients, I say, for the grand majority of pregnancies, up to the point the child is born, you quitting smoking is more important than anything I can do as a doctor, and I will gladly help you in any way I can towards that goal. I think maybe many people needed to hear that right there, because at the end of the day, these people aren't here to judge you. Granted, they probably will, because that is definitely going to happen in all of these situations, but at the end of the day, they're really here to help us. Sorry, I'm not a doctor. I'm only a lowly optician, but we have patients too, and they make me so angry. So, when I spend time fixing their rimless glasses, I hand them back and they start bending them to check and see if they still wiggle, which makes them wiggle again. When they put on a brand new pair of glasses and they start moving them all around, up and down, right to side, and claim their vision seems weird. Well, yes, you aren't allowing your eyes to relax through the focal point. Put it on your face and focus on one thing at a time until your eyes submit to the refraction. People who have been in progressive lenses for years but buy a new pair and suddenly don't know how to use the lenses properly. I give them a reading card and they try to look through the top of their lens to see up close and then claim they can't see. Well, yeah, that part of the lens is only for seeing far away. Look down, please. Not patients, but doctors. Doctors who are too arrogant and egotistical to acknowledge that the RX they wrote doesn't work for the patient. I don't even blame the doctor for the RX being wrong. It could be wrong from the patient's blood pressure, eye pressure, cataracts they refuse to get removed, allergies, dry eye issues. Maybe the patient is just stupid and can't answer questions correctly, but the doctor should always allow the patient to come back and get retested if need be. Also, don't blame my glasses. I check my end to make sure we didn't mess up before we send them back over. It's usually doctors who have an optical in their office who have this issue. We're their competition. Maybe they're just stupid. That is surprisingly the answer for a lot of things. I know sometimes I'm just stupid. As an emergency medicine doctor, leaving against medical advice when they have something serious, I had a patient with a very large pneumothorax, collapsed lung. He insisted that he knew his body and had to leave so he could sell his car. Another patient had a STEMI, the more serious type of heart attacks, and left against medical advice from the ambulance. Even had had the cardiologist talk to him on the phone, essentially saying, if you don't come to the hospital, you'll most certainly die, and still insists on not coming in. Smack overdose patients that act like jerks happen so often. Patients will be passed out, not breathing, vomits, has pneumonia in multiple lung lobes, on death's doorstep, but once you resuscitate them, all you get is a middle finger, literally get spit on, and sometimes they'll swing at you, screaming. Not all of them are this bad, but so many of them are. Non-emergent complaints. Our emergency departments get full to the brim with patients. Wait times are long, resources are low. Some patients clog up that system with non-emergent complaints. That should be dealt with in a clinic setting, not the emergency department. Medication refills or their specialist's appointment is too far away and they want to be seen by that specialist that day, or back pain they've had for 50 years that isn't any different today than usual. Overall, it's not bad though. A patient who's even a little appreciative goes a long way in making it feel worthwhile. Being able to actually reassure someone who was just scared over something small, or getting to make a positive impact on someone's life when they have something big, makes it feel worthwhile between a lot of jerks we encounter. My only thought on this is that some too many cases of people being low on their prescription might be an emergency because they might need it to live. I mean, what about drugs for diabetes? I'm pretty sure that's a thing where people need it, right? Med student here, but usually something along the lines of, are you a smoker? Nope. Have you ever smoked? Yes. How long were you smoking for? 2 packs a day for 50 years. When did you give up? 3 days ago. My partner is a doctor. She had 2 answers. First, the doorknob comment. Come for a 15-minute appointment, spend 14 minutes talking about a mild cough. Then, as she goes to leave the room, patient suddenly remembers, oh yeah, and my penis is green and smells strange. Second, having to write a medical certificate and letter for employers that require them if someone takes a day off because they're sick. Waste of everyone's time, in her opinion. Patient stated he has a cold, examined and determined that patient does indeed have a cold. Thanks for wasting my time. When they come in with non-evidence-based, unproven, and sometimes dangerous recommendations from their naturopaths, like broccoli juice cures cancer. According to my nurse girlfriend, when they bring their family member who has some medical training and that family member orders them around. Who? Who does that? Who? You've turned me into an owl. It's not their fault. But where I come from, we have to see 40 to 60 patients in an afternoon. Time is of the essence, and we have nearly 15 minutes to interview, figure out what they have, and tell them what could be done. Because of the time frame during the interview, we need objective answers, something patients avoid like hell. We ask when the pain started, and they say, well, I was at Mary's wedding when it started. I'm thinking, who's Mary? When was it? The 28th. Of which month? I have several other patients, and I don't mean to be rude with this, but I need answers. Come to me and ask me what they could potentially have, and then interrupt me, because their Google PhD knows better, I guess. Animal doctor here. I hate when clients bring in their pets for a sick exam and decline all diagnostics and treatments. It's one thing if they're financially in a rough spot. I try to help them out as much as I can, but it's another when they say things like, I just don't believe in medicine, or I can fix this with coconut oil, turmeric, essential oils, crystals, and I don't trust any of your advice. I feel like I've done nothing to help their little friend, and I worry about their pet all day. Bonus anger when they want to pay for a toenail trim for $20, and the medicine they've declined is cheaper than that. I've even gotten no's when I try to give them a free trim so that I could send home meds. Not a real doctor, but a dentist here. There are a few things that irk me, but I do realize that people really do not want to come to the dentist, so I try my best to ignore most of it. So the only thing I'll say, without trying to toot my dentist horn here, is that believe it or not, a lot of the things we do in dentistry on a day-to-day basis are actually pretty difficult technically. The fact that we do it so often that it becomes routine does not change that. I realize that patients have no idea what I am doing in their mouth for the most part, but believe me when I say that mistakes within fractions of a millimeter can mean the difference between an amazing result and a catastrophic failure. As such, when patients have either a bad attitude or are not interested in trying to help me, it adds a huge degree of difficulty to something that is already hard enough. People who don't open wide on purpose, even after being asked, or keep trying to sit up and want to rinse constantly, or ones that try to grab my hand when I'm giving an injection or drilling. I'm not asking you to do or not do certain things solely for my own good, it's actually for your own good, so that I can achieve a great result for you and your dental work. And also so that I don't accidentally bury my drill into the side of your tongue or the floor of your mouth while you are squirming around. I've never had a bad time at the dentist, except for the previously stated time where they were like, I'm going to take your wisdom tooth out. I'm like, haha, no you're not. And to expand on that, the only reason I was getting abscesses where my wisdom tooth was is because it was coming in. Now that it's like fully grown in there, it doesn't do anything now. I'd say the general belief many patients have nowadays, that pain is never okay. That being sick and feeling like crap while your body heals is unacceptable. You broke your ankle. I can do lots of things to help you heal and be in less pain, but it's going to hurt. Being pain-free is impossible. You have the flu, you're going to feel like complete butt for 5 to 7 days. Feverish, achy, weak, coughing. Frankly, unless you're seriously ill, you shouldn't be contaminating your community and my waiting room. Go to bed, take Tylenol, our ibuprofen, fluids, and wait. But it's not fair. We're in 2020 goddamn 4. Why don't we have flying cars or hoverboards or pills that just make us better already? I want robot arms. I want robot legs. I want to live in a cyberpunk dystopian future. God damn it. I feel like every generation has that. Like my mom's like, we were promised Back to the Future 2015, you know, hoverboards and everything, and now it's like, where's cyberpunk? When's that gonna happen? Not a doctor, but my mother is, so I heard all the stories while growing up. Here are a few things that annoy her. Arriving late to your appointment. If you arrive late and she's already behind and seeing the patient after you, she may ask you to reschedule if it's not an emergency. If you know you're going to be late, call in and let them know. It might save you a trip if the doctor is already behind, or they could tell you to come in anyway. If it's your first appointment, try to arrive at least 15 minutes early. There is going to be paperwork. It's obvious when people come in just looking to score some opiates or pain medication. It's sad and she wants to help, but most or all of those people are just looking to score some drugs, not get help. If for some reason you do not want a female doctor, you should tell the scheduling people when you make your appointment. It's happened a few times where a man would come in and not allow her to touch him due to religious restrictions. You just waste everyone's time with that. Don't just stop taking your meds because you start to feel better. Oftentimes the meds are what makes you feel better, so if you stop them, you will be back to square one. Some medications need to be tapered down so it can be dangerous to go cold turkey. If you do not speak English or are calling in for someone who does not know English, please let the staff know when they schedule the appointment. The clinic is required to pay for an interpreter for you. If they show up and cannot communicate, there is not much that can be done. If this is the case, please show up because they have to pay the interpreter even if you don't show up. Pay your bills. The billing department will work with you. If you have a certain number of unpaid bills, you will not be seen. Some guy once hired one of those services that claim to reduce your medical bills by negotiating for you. That sort of thing only really works with hospitals when you don't have recurring visits. The hospital might settle for getting a lower amount rather than getting even less by selling it to a collection agency. But a clinic that you have to go back and forth to every 6 months or so will just fire you as a patient. Don't be a prick. The doctors and nurses are doing their best to help you and deserve respect. They do not have to see you, so don't go treating them like some minimum wage cashier. You should also treat cashiers with respect. Don't try and walk all over them. My mother has 5 patients who were repeatedly rude to the front end and phone personnel. There is a section in your account where the staff can put notes for everyone to see when they pull up your billing info. If you're a prick to them, it will show up there, and you will find everyone much less accommodating. At what moment did you realize your date was a horrible person? Met a guy on a dating site. He asked if I had a single friend to bring on our first meetup since his cousin was in town and wanted to come along. Sure, whatever. My friend and I were stoked and we spent time getting all cute and stuff. We were 18 or 19. The guy comes. My date says he's low on gas, so I'd need to drive. Okay. I drive a 2-door coupe, but whatever. I ask where we were going for dinner. He replies, Jack in the Box. Okay. We get there and the cousin orders 20 tacos and the rest of us order, and my date finds that he has no money in his wallet. I pay. The cousin eats all 20 tacos. I proceed to text another friend with a frantic help text. She sends me an address of a hookah lounge and says to go there. There's a group of friends there, and maybe it'll be less awkward if it's a group thing. We go. Some random dude tells my date to shotgun me. Having never done hookah before, I didn't know what this was. Date proceeds to blow hookah smoke into my mouth and try to make out with me. I decide it's time to go home and we leave. Oh, on the car ride home, we find out that the cousin is married. There wasn't a second date with either couple. That's right, believe it or not, men also use dating apps for free food and just to leech off of someone. Decided to try dating a gamer girl. She played a lot of games I liked, but she only had one dimension. Games. I tried to talk to her about college, work, family, anything. It all came back to games. About an hour in, she finally told me she left college, quit work, and lives off a portion of her grandmother's pension to sit inside all day and play games. When she asked me what I'd do if she got knocked up, and then proceeded to tell me that her mom got herself intentionally pregnant to hook her dad. Noped right out of there. She was looking at me as a wallet. Not necessarily, but probably. I was at Cal Expo with this girl I crushed hard on during homeschool, and we were sitting together and I felt like maybe we could be a thing. If so, she would be my first and I could then brag to my friends about my beautiful girlfriend. Then building up things, I wanted to kiss her, so after her forcing it out of me that I want to kiss, she says, I can't give you that, I'll think about it, leaving me with my hopes up, and then she leaves because it's getting dark. The next day, I'm excited to see her at Cal Expo again, but she's with her friend and she ditched me for around 5 hours, and I'm just moping around. No money, no girl, sadness, and then I go home. About 2 weeks of me trying to unsuccessfully contact her, her grandmother, whom she lives with, comes up to me during church and tells me that her granddaughter liked me but said that I was too short and she already had a boyfriend. She had decided to lead me on and then basically give me a giant F you, shorty, even though she was the shorter one. I'm taken and you can't do crap. Needless to say, I was devastated. Now, I'm not going to call you a liar or anything, but there is a chance that this girl wasn't stringing you along and maybe you're just bad at communication. Now, I only say that because some things in this little story are quite frankly just lacking in confirmation or detail. Like, did you make it clear this was a date? Because I wouldn't call this stringing along. This sounds like possibility, and then it's not really, and then there's stringing along, like telling you over and over again, like I could be with you, extenuating circumstances to why I can't be with you, over and over for days, for weeks. That's stringing along. This just sounds like pretty minor to me. Blind date my kid sister set up between her coworker and me. When I arrive at her door, instead of introducing herself or even starting out with hi, the first words out of her mouth were, I've just found out I have chlamydia earlier today, so don't expect any SX later. Should have just turned right around there because the day kind of went downhill from there. Impossible though it may seem. Raucous, fake laughter, knocking over a very expensive bottle of wine on the next table as she dashed for the bathroom to retch, hitting a waiter's pants and shoes en route. Then after I cut the date short, she passed out in the car and nearly had to be carried bodily up the step to her door. A week later, she asked my sister why I hadn't called. I would say, why did she even go on the date in the first place? But I guess she needed a win, something pleasant. I mean, like, this lady sounds like a nightmare. I thought it was when she would try to one-up anything I said by mentioning she managed a bookstore in an airport. The horrible was sealed when she thought it would be cool to talk about screwing her future brother-in-law right before the ceremony. She said she only did him once, so it was cool. I didn't think so, so I told her she was messed up in the head and she could probably find a book to help with that. Frickin' based. I went on a date with a guy who was in the army. At the time, he was back from his second tour and decided to take the GI Bill for school. He dropped many details about how he was chosen to guard the Saudi royal family, wore designer suits with military-grade artillery underneath. You get the idea. What made him a horrible person? He bragged about being in Afghanistan was a cakewalk, and it's nothing like what it is portrayed as on the news. He went on to tell me that due to his rank, uniformed soldiers were his protection to and from. He laughed how he would give one of his escorts the worst seat in the convoy or just make fun of them because he felt like it. Lastly, he told me how when his tour was over, he helped himself to a karaoke machine and a bunch of Xbox games because I didn't have to pay for that crap. Sounds like a major issue of ego and self-importance. I went on a date with this maths teacher. He was loud, but I figured I could look past that. We were talking about exercising at the time. I was actually about 30 pounds heavier than I am today. Out of nowhere, he says, "Oh, you're not that fat." Gee, thanks. I'm overly polite, so I kind of just ride out the date, and at the end, I dropped him back off at his car, and I was looking straight ahead and had both hands on the wheel and said goodnight. Then this guy had the audacity to ask for a kiss. I kind of fluffed it and just said, I don't kiss on the first date. Well, a woman who'll kiss on the very first date is usually a hussy, and a woman who'll kiss on the second time out is anything but fussy. But a woman who'll kiss on the third time around, head in the clouds, feet on the ground, she's the girl he's glad he's found, she's his shaboopy.
My brother took one girl out on a date to a fancy restaurant one time. At the end of the meal, my brother asked why a bottle of wine on the drinks menu was so expensive, $400 a glass, and the waiter went to go fetch it to show him. It turns out it was a collector's edition of wine that came from Revolutionary-era France and was so expensive because not many bottles survived during that time and came with a certificate of authenticity when you ordered it. My brother found the story interesting, but just asked for the check and declined to order the $400 wine. The girl he was with got mad that he wasn't willing to buy her a glass of $400 wine and got up and stormed out the restaurant, saying that a real man would buy a woman what she wants. It's the origin of me and my brother's inside joke where we call anything outrageously expensive French wine.
I have heard too many of these stories where it's like take someone to date at dinner and then they order a really expensive thing and just reveal themselves to be a massive jerk and a user. She told me she cheated on an ex-fiancé who lived out of state at the time with another guy because she got lonely. This was on the first date, in the first 10 minutes. I can believe that, I just don't believe that they told you in the first 10 minutes. Not me, but one of my guy friends who I originally met as the boyfriend of one of my high school friends told me that she would tell him bad things about me and our other friends, saying we're buttholes, etc., especially about her ex. She showed him a letter her ex wrote back, then thinking she can get the boyfriend to side with her more about how pathetic her ex is, and in it, he was spilling his heart out to her and forgiving her for all the bad things she did. That's when the boyfriend realized that the ex was actually a really nice guy and that she was the butthole of the group. Took her to prom and she told me as we pulled up, just because we're each other's dates doesn't mean we have to dance exclusively with each other. We went in and she left me at the door. After an hour of not seeing her, I left her there and got drunk at home. Good on you, lad. 1 year into the relationship when she became controlling and abusive. 5 years later, still just putting up with it because I need someone to cuddle occasionally and I have no friends to support me in a breakup and don't know any girls to even begin thinking about dating. Get out of that relationship right now and use all the reasons that you weren't going to get out of the relationship to motivate you to find those things that you need. All it takes is to put yourself out there a little bit. I was wearing a shirt with Han Solo on it, hoping it'd be a good entry-level nerdiness icebreaker. He said, "Oh, I like your shirt." "Oh, okay, that's good." "Yeah, I've seen that guy live like 4 times. "Live?" "Yeah, Bon Jovi." Wait, no, it's not Bon Jovi. Are you messing with me? Oh, you're right. It's that guy from the movie. There were several movies. Space Wars, right? It started when she arrived early for our date. I was getting in the shower when she texted me to let me know that she was there. I let her in and explained to her that I was going to take a shower real quick. So I'm in the bathroom and have the shower running when I realize I forgot my towel. I go out of the bathroom to grab a towel and find her knuckle deep in my daughter's piggy bank. I made her leave and decided to delete my dating profile. Well, time to do what I do on every first date, arrive early and then steal from their children. Tinder date. Met her at a coffee shop, tried to recruit me into a multi-level marketing scheme. Since I wasn't completely alpha, I listened to her entire sales pitch before leaving. This happened to 2 of my dad's close friends with the same woman 30 years apart. My dad told me this story a few weeks ago. My dad's best friend took a woman to a Detroit Tigers game 30 years ago where she proceeded to get belligerent drunk and was getting into shouting matches with some of the guys sitting in front of them. She kept turning to my dad's friend, expecting him to defend her crappy behavior and fight these men he had no beef with. He was mortified, but hey, it was a Tigers game in 1984. What self-respecting Detroiter would leave? After the game, he dropped her off at home, and she cussed him out for not fighting those guys for her the whole way home. They never spoke again. Last year, a mutual friend of my dad and his best friend had gotten a divorce and was on the online dating market. He matched with this woman around his age who seemed nice enough, so they decided to meet for drinks and billiards at a local pool bar. According to him, she started drinking heavily for a woman in her early 50s right from the get-go, and wouldn't you know it, she started a number of verbal disputes with several male customers. Notice a pattern? She looks at my dad's friend, who has gone from confused at her behavior to utterly shocked, as if he's going to swoop in and defend her from these brutes. He apologizes to the men and says he's got no issue with them, pays his and his date's tab, and left. She probably had to get a cab home, but he told my dad he didn't care. She's a grown woman, and he's getting too old to deal with such childish bullcrap. When he told this story to my dad and the friend from the first story, they asked to see a picture of her. He showed them them her online dating profile, and my dad's other friend erupts in laughter at the coincidence. Not only did they have nearly identical catastrophic first dates, they were both with the same woman 30 years apart. Met up with a blind date. Nice looking girl, we did our introductions, and then she asked what I do for a living. I told her, and then I asked what she did for a living, and then she says, it doesn't matter, because I'm the girl, and guys are supposed to pay for the bill anyway. She wasn't joking at all. I smiled, had a sensible chuckle, and told her to have a nice day, noped the heck out of there, and I believe she called me a couple of names as I walked off. Quickest date ever, it lasted all of 50 seconds. I've definitely had at least 5 girls tell me they flaked on another guy to go on a date with me because I asked after she already made plans with him, but she thought I was cooler and better looking. Sounds cool at first, then you realize how many times you've been flaked on and see how heartless girls can be on a whim. I probably would have just said, how long will it be until someone cooler and better looking than me comes along? And no, I'm not speaking from experience there because there is no one cooler and better looking than me. We were at the local mall and a couple walked by holding hands. One was white, the other was black. My date stopped and turns around to watch the couple as they walk away. He looks to me and says, "Man, I will never get used to that. N-word shouldn't be dating white women." I'm going to take this opportunity to say everyone should watch the film Look Who's Coming to Dinner with Sidney Poitier. I don't know if they've remade it or anything. Watch the original version though, it's a classic. When I Google searched him later, just out of curiosity, and found out he had been arrested for trying to run down his pregnant girlfriend with his SUV. This was after she had gotten a restraining order against him. I used to be a good church-going guy, and I once asked a girl from church if she would like to go to a hockey game and grab some pizza. I borrowed my mom's car for the date, picked her up, and we went for supper, then to the game. We lived about 35 to 40 kilometers away in another town. The seats were my father's season tickets. If you were to ask me, I would say they were not bad seats on the aisle, but also nobody beside us, a railing to rest our feet on, and a clear view of the ice from one end with nobody in front of us. We were first row on the second level. 20 minutes, I repeat, 20 minutes into the game, she says, if I'd known the seats were going to be this bad, I would have gone out with my real friends. I was so angry and hurt that I got up from my seat and said something along the lines of, well, you should get in touch with your real friends soon because you're going to need a ride home. Then I walked out. She tried to stop me, but I ignored her and walked away. I saw her a few other times, but her attempt at an apology was ignored. I'm still bitter, and it has been 21 years. What are you into? Video games, books, music, politics. I love talking about politics. Oh, yeah, I was listening to Rush Limbaugh on the drive here. I'm only saying this on a passing glance on Google at who Rush Limbaugh is. I don't know if they have any more extreme opinions about certain topics, but hey, I'm just gonna say this. If you're conservative, that doesn't make you a bad person. Stop assuming that people are bad people because they have different politics to you. And yes, the same applies to Democrats. People seriously need to start judging each other based on the actions that they take. When he talked about stuffing hookers and turning them into lamps, thanks, OK Cupid. Or the other one was when he started saying Hitler was actually misunderstood and that wouldn't it be hilarious if he firebombed my car? 0.0, I was a bait crazy 19-year-old. That's all I have to say about that. This just happened to me the other day. First time meeting someone new for drinks. For a few hours, the conversation is fine. I'm liberal and I don't want to get too far in before finding out how much we have in common. The conversation turns to the first GOP debate. I tell her that I like Bernie Sanders, obviously not in the debate. She likes Rubio. In an effort to convince me we have much in common, she begins by assuring me she has many gay friends. Okay then. Explaining why she's conservative, she says, but after working hard all day, when I go to get my nails done, I don't need to be waiting behind all these African American women with all their babies they can't afford on their Obama phones. It was such a starkly rude, offensive, and ignorant remark. I kind of thought she was making a joke. Do people really say Obama phone? I don't know if this makes her a horrible person, but I found it really offensive. He told me about how his brother hit a girl walking on the side of the road. It was dark, no streetlights, she was wearing dark clothing, the girl died. Think she was about 15. He was angry because his brother didn't get compensated for the damage done to his car. The conversation went a little bit like, dude, a family lost their daughter. Yeah, and that's sad, but what about my brother's car? This was over the span of 4 dates. She told me that her daughter's father only had supervised visits. Later in the conversation, she told me the reason his visits had to be supervised, because when the kid was 4 weeks old, she let him. And this piece of crap, this reprehensible piece of crap first-time father, didn't support the baby's head properly. According to her, she insisted he was only allowed supervised visits for 4 years, for something like 3 hours per month. I don't remember the exact duration, but I know she said it was a period of so many hours per month. But then she told me, kids don't need a father anyway. I've raised my daughter pretty much alone since she was 5 months old, if not before, which she knew. She also hinted that she wanted more kids, but without explicitly saying so. A sperm donor would do. I'm pretty sure the stuff about the guy being a reprehensible piece of crap is supposed to be sarcastic. We were in line at a drive-through fast food joint for an after-bar snack. When the food wasn't ready the moment we drove up to the window, she reached over and honked the horn at them. I was mortified. Back in the days of MySpace, I scoped out this girl's page before meeting up for lunch to make sure she didn't have any screaming red flags. I made sure to reiterate that it was a strictly platonic meetup, and she agreed. She kept hitting on me the entire time. I tried to change the subject to small talk, and she mentioned that she was a single child from absentee parents, blah blah, pity party. These were all lies, since her very public MySpace page showed wonderful family outings with very seemingly involved parents and a handful of siblings. I avoided her around campus the rest of my college career, and she could never figure out why. Not as bad as some, but when I was 17, I met a guy at the farmer's market who was older, 23, and we decided to go out for coffee during the day. So we met up, had a nice chat. Afterwards, we went for a walk and he tried to kiss me. After politely rejecting him, he kept trying. I know I should have been firm with him and told him that it made me uncomfortable, but I was afraid to upset him. We had taken his car to a nearby park, and we were somewhat alone. I didn't return his phone calls or anything after that. It wasn't necessarily one moment, but a series of god-awful events that tipped me off. So, guy asks me out on a date as a present for my birthday. Yeah, he was my birthday present. Should have known right then. We go out to lunch, I get stuck paying for the meal and most of his, and am told that I am being kind of stingy with the tip. I put $4 down and my sandwich was only $8, but okay, whatever. So he asked me to go to a movie after, but he doesn't want to drive because his truck is bad on gas. I can't drive because my parents won't let me give people rides. He doesn't care, so he tries to pressure me into driving him anyway. I won't, so he throws a fit and gets into his car. So I get into his truck and, being the pushover that I was at the time, apologize that he had to drive. He huffs and goes, "Well, you know what? The least that you could do is give me gas money." This dude asked me out and basically complained the entire time that I was a pain in the butt. I can't remember if there were worse people than this, but already the fact that they're like, "I'm your present, my darling," is like, ugh. He pushed back the time of our date by an hour at the last minute. When I got to the restaurant, I walked inside and he was nowhere to be found. I called him. Turns out he was at a bar down the road and told me to just come there instead. I didn't know exactly where it was, and he gave me bad directions. When I got there, he had already eaten. He spent most of the night watching the TV at the bar and ignoring everything I said. This girl I was with started talking about her birthday when she told me that she's had bikinis and muscles at her birthday party since she was 10. When I asked her about 10-year-olds being ripped, she responded with, "Well, yeah, I don't hang out with the losers." I laughed, and then she told me that she was serious and that she only hung out with cool people. I was like, nah. What? What was banned at your school and why? Flipping water bottles. They had ledges for windows above the doors and people were throwing water bottles up there and getting them stuck. So if you flip a water bottle, you get in trouble. That's stupid. Not just the punishment for it, but just the fact that people do that for entertainment. Animals. Somebody thought it would be funny to organize an unofficial bring your pet to school day as a senior prank, and the result was that everybody with allergies nearly died. Manga, because in the opinion of the vice principal, it was all smut. That is so lame. This wasn't at my school, but at the rival middle school across town. They put a ban on the word kill. Teachers couldn't even use it in their lectures. Apparently, someone or a few people told one girl to delete herself, and she got triggered and went to guidance complaining about it. Then the principal put a ban on the word kill. I understand banning swear words. I understand being like, hey, don't say like, poop or fornicate in the swearing way, because I swear a fair bit. I try not to, because it's not very classy. Cooking is an impractical art. Today, everyone can just buy pre-made meals and no one has time to cook, or they could be smart and hire a personal chef. This boiled my blood. Who the heck says this? Cooking is so a practical art. Way to go, jackhole principal, or whatever you call him. Teaching children that laziness is the key to society, that it can just be done for you. So wait, like cooking was like banned at the school? I mean, children shouldn't really be cooking at school because all kinds of things could go wrong unless under supervision. Like imagine if that was the general rule, school dinners consisting of, I don't know, cold pre-packaged pigs in a blanket or something, or like, I don't know, sushi meal packs that you can get from the store. Overall though, yeah, that is kind of telling kids like, yeah, be lazy, don't learn how to cook or anything like that. I love cooking. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade. Most makeup could only wear mascara and had to be upperclassmen. Those finger fortune tellers because it was related to witchcraft, but literally Catholicism is the most superstitious out of the demographics. Like, we bury a statue of Joseph to help sell our house. Now, is that not also witchcraft? Any sweatshirts that didn't have the school's logo, purses? I mean, it was Catholic school, so there's not much to get banned anyways. I wouldn't say Catholicism is the most superstitious. I'm pretty sure all religions, if you look enough into them, have really weird rules and at least believe in some form of superstition or just some absolute bollocks. I can't possibly remember all of the dumb rules, but in middle school we weren't allowed to wear hats, carry backpacks, leave the cafeteria during lunch, or walk back to our lockers to pick up something we forgot at the end of the day. After we'd already walked to the front of the school, they were afraid we were going to be doing illegal substance deals back there. This was an affluent suburb. I was once sitting in the front hallway waiting for my friend who I was going to hang out with after school. Eventually, she, a white girl, came out, but then realized she'd forgotten her binder, so she begged to be allowed to go back and get it. They begrudgingly let her. Then, a few minutes later, a black boy also asked to go back to his locker, and they said no. One of the middle schools I went to banned all backpacks that weren't either mesh or clear plastic, which led to crappy backpacks that had to be replaced every couple of months, because adults had to be able to make sure that you weren't carrying anything illegal or had weapons. The school had a problem with a couple of rival gangs, and having nearly 3,000 kids packed into a school designed for 1,000 at the most, so part of it made sense, but the backpacks we were allowed were so utterly pieces of crap because they were so cheaply made. My high school got rid of soda machines, which if you dug up a yearbook from 6 or so years ago, there were pictures of those soda things you find at gas stations and most restaurants, and there used to be a vending machine that sold candy and soda. So they banned students from bringing in baked goods to celebrate birthdays as well as candy for health reasons. The utterly hilarious thing about these bans was that we had what was called the senior store, where candy, soda, energy drinks, and just about everything banned for health reasons could be obtained. So they didn't ban it, they just made it that you had to pay them for the stuff that you wanted. That kind of makes sense. I mean, I'm pretty sure on a lot of those vending machines, it's like people come and collect the money from them. I'm not entirely sure about the logistics of it, but I'm pretty sure the school doesn't own those machines really, which would make even more sense as to why they would just set up a store for you to get these things, because if someone damages those machines, I'm pretty sure the school has to like do something about it rather than the people who manufactured it. Yeah, nothing here sounds terribly bad, especially when it's like, oh, the area is known for like rival gangs and stuff, which at least a few, maybe more kids could potentially be a part of. So nothing here is like egregious really to me, but yeah, as someone attending the school, I can see why it's like, man, this is annoying. My middle school banned anything that had artificial scents. This includes body spray, perfume, cologne, scented deodorant, and scented hand sanitizer. This was in 8th grade. We never could put on sprays during school because some kids would go overboard, but with the addition of the new rule, we couldn't even wear it to school. One girl said, "Can I wash my hair with scented shampoo?" The teacher replied with, "Yes." She then asked, "Then why can't I wear perfume?" The teacher had no idea what to say and blamed it on the handbook. No, yeah, I kind of get that one because I remember being in high school and people spraying way too much deodorant and guys with like asthma being like, "Oh, you're killing me!" Counter-Strike 1.6. They initially thought deleting and reformatting every PC in the school would help, but it just kept coming since most of us had it on our flash drives. It got serious to a point that a kid would be suspended if he was caught playing it. Maybe it's because I'm a gamer, but I always kind of thought that, I don't know, you could have video games in school, it could work if you just placed a heavy rule on it, an asterisk, there is a time and place for this sort of thing. I think games can be used to help educate people in things like teamwork, working together. It can also be a good way for kids to find common ground with each other. I don't know, that's just my thought on it. I'm probably wrong, I'm not a teacher. That, and I am too used to, at least in my experience of high school, people having an opportunity to do something cool and then squandering it and ruining it for everyone else. This is actually a personal one and it applied more to a class than an entire school, where we used to go up to the hills for a certain class and we were learning how to accurately read maps, and we would go off in groups, and one group decided, and it was full of jerks and one kind of semi-annoying guy because no one got to pick their groups, and they decided to desert this semi-annoying guy, in which we came back, it was like, "Where is he?" We left him, and then we had to go find him, and when we got back to the bus, we were told, "Yeah, we're never doing this again, you've squandered this opportunity, why did you do that, you're stupid." Water guns. I did my last 2 years of high school in a Catholic school in Miami. During my senior year, I found my younger brother's water gun in my backpack. No idea why it was there, but anyone with multiple siblings know you find random things in random places. So I decided to fill it up with water, pull my sweater's sleeves, yes, it was 90-something degrees outside, but indoors was Arctic, over the water gun so you couldn't see it, and proceeded to walk the halls while randomly shooting it in the air, confusing people as I went. I got the bright idea to start actually shooting my friends in the face, because why not? I somehow had sniper-ready skills and was able to get you down the hole right in the eye, which became a standing challenge to all the guys since I'm a chick, and damn that Latino machismo and Catholic upbringing. The next day, a couple of other seniors brought in little water guns and attacked people. The following day, a few more, to the point of the seniors running up and down the halls, stairs, jumping into classrooms, hiding around corners just for the perfect shot. The underclassmen thought they could get in on the action until we declared that if a senior caught you with one, we could confiscate it and then drench you with it. We were able to get away with our water war for exactly 1 week before the buzzkill dean of students announced that anyone caught with a water gun would be suspended. Licorice. We would buy the licorice from the tuck shop, the type that had 3 or 4 strings together and be long enough to swing. We would run around during lunch swatting each other with them. One day they just stopped selling and stocking them. That's when we started using those weeds with the big bindies on the end again, the ones that would dig and get stuck in your skin. Wearing red or blue shirts. I grew up in an area that was gang infested. It was so bad that some of the kids in elementary school and middle school were a part of those gangs. They also had locker checks for illegal substances and weapons. High security with fences in school grounds. This was in the late 90s to early aughts. I remember in elementary school they banned Happy Crack, which was basically just a bag of anything powdery and sweet mixed together. Go to school with a few packets of Kool-Aid, Pixie Sticks, and sugar, no one would care. Mix it together in a bag and it'd be a problem. Everyone would just eat the stuff. All it took was that one kid who snorted it to ruin the fun for everyone. In hindsight, it was probably a lot better for my health that the kid snorted that crap.
Amen to that, brother.
I was from an all-girls Catholic secondary school, and in our second year, the discipline master imposed a ridiculous no hugging for more than 30 seconds rule. Not sure why they started the rule, but it was rumored that they caught 2 girls getting it on in one of the bathroom stalls. Not surprising, all the girls knew it was a thing and were cool with it, and relationships were common, like any other school. Being an all-girls school, we were all super comfy with each other, and hugging your friends was common. So despite the rule, we'd purposely hug each other in front of the teachers and just stay there, casually counting to 30. Pennies. Pennies were banned at my school. We had this weird kid we all called Crazy Larry. Every week freshman year, this kid Larry would leave pennies in random places. In lockers, on desks, lunch trays, you name it. This persisted for 2.5 years. Junior year rolled around, and evidently a member of one of Larry's math class so happened to go to the bathroom right after Larry had left to do so. What he saw was almost unimaginable. Larry had been stuffing pennies by the roll up his butt. He would then go throughout his day and leave pennies anywhere he saw fit. You know, find a penny
money, pick it up all day long, you'll have good luck. I've lost my faith in that now. Thanks, Larry. Crazy Bones. Tiny collectible plastic figures of random things like sharks, aliens, and sludge monsters. This was in primary school, aged 7 to 11 for those of you not from the UK, and they were insanely popular with pretty much every kid in this age group in my area. Kids being kids, it wasn't long before we were stealing them from each other, which it seemed like the teachers could mostly put up with, but even so, a few whole school assemblies were held over this. However, the last straw was one particular bullying incident where an 8-year-old had one shoved up his butt and had to go to the hospital. Letters were sent out to parents, and every school in the country banned us from taking them into school. Ah, those were the good old days. Goddamn, I remember Crazy Bones. I thought this was just kind of nice. I was like, oh yeah, I remember Crazy Bones. They were great. Used to flick them at each other, like line them up like little bowling pins and stuff, and see how many you could lock down by flicking one at them, and then nope, up the butt it goes. Goddamn, I wasn't expecting that. Now I'm just wondering, why the hell did the school go ban the Crazy Bones? It's the Crazy Bones' fault. Like, I'm sure that boy got reprimanded, sent to a juvenile detention center, removed from public school, as they probably should be. But why you gotta hate on the Crazy Bones? Pokemon cards were banned around 2003 because people were getting into fights, stealing them from each other, and trading them for more money than kids should have. I went to school in Jordan, so naturally we're all businessmen. After they banned it, a sort of black market emerged with code words and dealers that went by pseudonyms. We'd meet the guys in charge in between the trees in a hidden spot, and that's where the exchange would happen. It became a sort of mafia, a mafia run by 11-year-olds. Pogs, specifically the slammers, keenies we called them. People in our school would sharpen the metal ones in metalworking and technology class and throw them at each other. Toilet doors, to allow teachers to check if students were doing illegal substances in said toilets. I don't go to the school anymore, but my youngest sister says they are now banned from going inside at break times. Now, my school did have a serious illegal substance issue for a few years that ended up with 2 kids committing self-deletion after getting caught by their parents. After someone put Halo Combat Evolved on the network drive and it started to rival Microsoft Word for most used software in the building, they had to ban that. Unfortunately, the person responsible for making the announcement had the computer literacy of a mountain goat. So the official rule was something like, don't be downloading Halo websites on the computers. I don't know how long ago this person might have been referring to this, but like, goddamn, kids are so lucky nowadays to have a school where it's like, oh, at least your computers can play frickin' Halo or something. We were lucky enough if Happy Wheels frickin' worked on a good day on the school computers. Nipple cripples. A weird dude in my class got a lot of laughs by letting people give him nipple cripples. Apparently, after repeated and increasingly hard nipple cripples, the connective tissues behind his nipple broke. So this guy could literally stretch his nipples 5 to 6 inches off his chest. Obviously, being a teenager and a weird one at that, he went around showing everyone and their mother his new ability. He got warned about it several times, and the final straw was when he was seen by the administration with an equally weird girl sucking his nipples 5 to 6 inches off his chest. Oh my god. They immediately banned nipple cripples, but there was really no need. We were all pretty scarred by what we had seen from this kid. I can't believe I'm about to do this, but for those of you asking what this looked like, the best I can describe it would be an upside-down funnel. When he would pull on the nipple, all the loose skin surrounding it would come off of his chest, and a sort of cone-shaped base would comprise the first 3 inches, and the rest did pretty much look like a penis nipple. It was probably a decent 3 to 4 inch diameter circle around his nipples of broken connective tissue, so I promise you, it came off his chest a solid 5 to 6 inches over 3 sports seasons during 3 years of high school. I can also tell you that it got to that point aggressively. He was literally tugging on that nip in the locker room every day, stretching it out, but who am I to judge, I guess? You could only kind of tell that it was messed up before he would pull on it. I'm not sure if that would eventually repair itself or just sort of sagged in the grossest way possible as he gets older. I hope you're happy now. I'm going to have PTSD nightmares tonight. Now, I only call them nipple cripples, which is what we call them in England, or at least that's what a lot of people I know call them in England, because they were calling them TT twisters, and I'm pretty sure TT, if you know what I'm trying to say, there is a no-no word on YouTube now because of all the goddamn rules of censorship and stuff. Google. Our high school had some kind of contract with this really crappy school-appropriate search engine called NetTrekker. They banned using Google in school because it wasn't scholarly. Only NetTracker was allowed. They tried extending this to beyond the school. They wanted us to use only NetTracker for internet searches outside of school and sent home a pamphlet about internet rules outside the classroom. They said that the students shouldn't have Android phones. I got a referral to having a Moto X smartphone. This was in 2015. Two-way hallways. Sounds crazy, right? The principal and his staff thought that it'd be a smart idea to have one-way hallways in order to cut down student traffic. If your locker was right around the corner and you had to go against the traffic in order to get there, you had to walk all the way around. If you passed your class on the way to your locker, you had to make 2 circles around the building. This significantly increased tardiness and write-ups. Terrible idea. Maybe I would make an okay principal. I wouldn't make a decision that stupid. At least I say that, but ultimate power corrupts absolutely, and as we are all aware, I'm sure, there is no power quite so ultimate as that of a school principal. Looney Tunes characters on your clothes. It was the 90s at a crappy school. Bionicles. We would smash them together, and whoever's helmet fell off first was the loser. So many bloody hands in 4th grade. Any liquid not in a clear plastic bottle, and then the only liquid we could have was water. The ban was because a girl in my grade got caught with vodka in a clear plastic bottle. Everyone in my school never understood the ban because vodka is clear like water, and the only reason the teacher even caught on to her was because another dumb kid was joking around about alcohol, and the idiot with the vodka threw the bottle away in the garbage next to the teacher's desk. Sack whacking. Guys would hit each other in the balls as a prank or whatever. Apparently it was causing a big enough problem that the entire school had to attend an assembly where the deputy principal informed everyone there has been a large outbreak of sack whacking. Entire school was laughing so hard even the deputy, who was a really strict and uptight guy, started laughing his butt off. We were also banned from playing with large balls, basketballs, soccer balls, etc. at the same assembly. That was also received very well. Yogurt eating contests were immediately banned at my high school when an overzealous football lineman vomited about a quart of yogurt and then attempted to re-eat the yogurt to win the contest. Domino vomit effect throughout the cafeteria. Now hold on a second. What all of you may be thinking, and what the person who witnessed this may be thinking as well, is this guy is disgusting. I say, this young man has exactly what we need to take us to state, people! Candy necklaces at my middle school. One day a couple of my friends came into the playground before school started with a candy necklace each. We immediately got everyone's attention after we all demanded to know where they got them and how much they cost from the corner shop down the street in 10p as I recall. 1 or 2 others said they might go and get one for themselves before school started. That might go turned into them sprinting to the shop once one kid figured out how to weaponize them, holding one piece of candy between their teeth, stretching forward the elastic and biting down. It would catapult pieces of candy at whatever it was aimed at. That morning, a few kids bought a candy necklace each and played a game of firing bits at each other. The next morning, all 400 kids that attended that school were engaged in all-out necklace war. Every single one of us must have had at least one and our own technique for maximizing the firing rate. After doing our best recreation of trench warfare all morning and having the kind of fun that only comes with an entire playground full of kids all playing the same game, we were all ushered into the assembly hall to be told that candy necklaces were now banned. Nobody lost an eye, just in case you were wondering. I think I really vaguely remember people doing that with candy necklaces as well, but I don't think it ever caught on big enough that it became something that got banned. Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, and Pokemon cards. Some of the kids at school started trading and selling them during lunch, but it got so bad as the kids were actually selling stolen cards they got from other students. My friend was swirly one morning for his deck, and later that day he saw a kid with his Dark Magician card. He knew it was his because he had a tendency to chew the ends of his cards. The teachers put a stop to all of it, including playing the card games and bringing them on school grounds. And here I am once again just thinking to myself, what would really happen if you just removed the children from the situation that were causing all of the problems? Would perhaps many children be deprived of a proper education? Maybe. In middle school, they banned the jersey of a Japanese baseball player on the Chicago Cubs. The vice principal believed that Fukudome was actually a joke, and he believed it said, "F you, do me." True story.
Why did that teacher get fired from your school? My freshman basketball coach, who was also a freshman football coach, got his 18-year-old senior girlfriend pregnant. Next year, the varsity basketball coach paid for all the basketball costs with his company and took all the fundraising money as reimbursement. People were not happy. This isn't so much why he got fired, but what he did when he got fired. So, a male teacher at my high school, call him Mr. M. Mr. M had worked at my high school for 30 plus years. He taught my eldest sister even, who is now in her 40s. He was like a founder of the place, in his own mind anyway. Mr. M, who has always been a long-time council member, so the community has always held him in high regard, minus his students. Ask anyone who has been taught by this man any time over those 30 years, and they will all tell you that he is the most dirty, sexist, racist, misogynistic slimeball you'll ever meet. Examples. Witnessed him tell a 15-year-old girl her legs go all the way up. Witnessed him force a dyslexic kid in our class to read aloud, laugh at him, then ask if he was mentally impaired. Witnessed him tell a kid from a low-income family that he could never afford the shoes he was wearing. Dude used to always wear really, really short shorts and sit with his legs wide open, so there was that imagery I'm sure many of my classmates were exposed to. Anyway, it was 2015, I think, maybe 2014. The government announced a few budget cuts here and there, and a few schools across the country were affected. My school was one of them, and in turn had to fire 2 teachers. One teacher was retiring at the end of the year anyway, so they put their hand up to take one of the positions, but there was still one more teacher that needed to be let go of. After months of delegation, kids complaining about all of their least favorite teachers, you name it, it was decided that Mr. M was to be let go. His work mostly focused on the council anyway, and he had reduced his teaching hours to part-time, so it made sense. But this is the weird part. Second to last day of the school year, during an award ceremony, a woman bursts through the doors mid-ceremony yelling, "There's a classroom on fire! Surprise, surprise! Whose classroom was it? Mr. M's. For some weird reason also, he had managed to park his car right up next to his classroom. Like, this wasn't a driveway where his car was parked. He never ever parked it there. No one put their cars there. Kids would damage them, but of course it too just happened to catch on fire as well. Not long after, he emerged wailing and yelling about all his valuables that were still in the class, claiming a student had done it, etc. Like, no. All the students were conveniently in the assembly hall. He had no reason to even be at the school that day, but for some reason, he was hanging around. Everything about the whole situation was very hush-hush. However, it's a small town and people talk. He 100% did that crap to try and get a reimbursement from his job loss and his demotion in the council. He was then escorted off of school grounds and just lost the overall respect of the community. Sounds like a pretty unpleasant guy, and I don't really get how he thought he'd get away with that with the timing as well as just the motive. The motive was there. 2 different teachers within 2 years of graduating high school. One young male teacher was caught Snapchatting a pic of his crotch to an underage high school student. He was my AP Chem teacher and had major creep vibes, but he was that cute science teacher. He did some time and he's now a real estate agent. The other one, a football coach, stole a student's misplaced expensive watch and pawned it. The student had reported it stolen, so he was arrested. Gave an entire class of seniors a D- in math because they all had terrible homework. Was also the math teacher for the Year 8 accelerated learners, the smarter ones. Unluckily, I happened to be in said class. I had trigonometry with algebra assignments and worked my butt off studying and writing hours each day. I handed it in knowing 100% I was going to get a good mark. I had it peer-reviewed by my older brother, older friends, and a grade above, and even teachers. I got a C. I asked why he gave me this mark. His reply? I couldn't read your writing. I directed his attention to the typed copy attached on the back. He proceeded to tell me to stop making excuses and that it's okay to be mentally impaired. He did similar things with nearly half the class. Pretty much all the boys. F you, Mr. T. Now hear me out. What if? Just what if everyone that you showed it to is also mentally impaired? I'm joking. Also, don't say that about Mr. T. I know you're talking about another individual, but I pity the fool that don't put some respect on the name Mr. T. We had a geography teacher who was also the girls' basketball coach. I knew he was weird just by looking at him, and he was quite creepy just by the way he would walk around the class and stand right by a student for about 20 seconds before saying anything. I was a student aide, and I would go to classes and give passes to students that needed to go to the principal's office or to the attendance office. One day I had to go to the gym because his class right then was girls basketball and had to give a pass to the teacher/coach, who I'ma call Chad. Well, Chad had a clipboard and he stuck it in front of his pants, and he would be in the position as if he's in the thrusting movement. I thought that's pretty creepy, but whatever, and even though I'm a boy, he would talk to me in a creepy, perverted way. Anyway, a few months later, Chad was caught in a Walmart parking lot that was decently busy with a girl riding him. He was arrested and the school tried to downplay what happened so no one knew, but the local news got the story and it was spread across the school. For the first 3 days, they would get people in trouble if they talked about it, but then they gave up because most of the school, 3,800 plus students, were talking about it, making jokes. Chad was fired and charged, of course, and he had 2 kids that went here, but they moved immediately after this came out. We have no idea who the girl was that was with this pervert, but apparently he's also been with more than just her. Utterly disgusting. He was the music teacher, so he was also teaching show choir or whatever they call it. The show choir is the one after school when they get to travel a lot. He embezzled a lot of money from the show choir's accounts. I looked it up and it was over $200,000, charged with 1 count of theft by unlawful taking of more than $5,000 and 4 counts of second-degree forgery. The theft charge is a Class 2A felony, 2 of the forgery charges are Class 3 felonies, while the remaining charges are Class 4 felonies. Show choir sounds cool as hell, get to travel around the country and sing and play music and stuff. No, that sounds sick. She didn't get fired. She got bullied into quitting so the school wouldn't have to pay her severance, or whatever it's called in English. Why? Because she was nice and helpful to the kids. I have selective mutism. It was much worse back then than it is now. Back then, I didn't talk at school. At all. Not a single word. Selective mutism is an anxiety disorder that makes you unable to speak in certain situations. For me, those situations were anywhere in public, especially school, and around people I didn't see often, such as distant relatives and family friends, etc. From 2nd until 5th grade, I had this amazing teacher. She was always nice, always helpful. She even made this club with me and a few other girls who I used to play with. Every Monday after school, we would all go to my house and play. At the time, I thought it was just for fun, but now I see that it was probably a form of therapy for me. Playing with these girls equaled something I'm comfortable with people I'm fairly comfortable with in a setting where I'm comfortable, also known as my home. I loved this teacher. My parents and I even got her a chocolate Easter bunny. We used to go to Germany during Easter, and in my opinion, the Easter bunnies you get there are better than the ones you get here in Norway, so I wanted to give one to my teacher. But I think my parents paid for it, so technically it was from them. We even drove to her home and placed it outside her door, either to surprise her or because she wasn't home. I don't remember. She really appreciated it, and when she saw me at school, she said that she hadn't eaten it yet because she wanted to see if it would have babies so she could have more chocolate. You know that nice teacher from Matilda? I don't remember her name. Honey something. My teacher was pretty much exactly like her, and the principal, kind of like the principal in Matilda too, not exactly like her, but close enough to be honest. I never liked the principal and vice principal at the school, but I never really knew why. I just got a bad or negative vibe from them. And they both had the classic Karen haircut. Well, they didn't like what my teacher did for her students. They didn't like that she was helping me be more confident so that maybe I'd be able to speak. They didn't like that she was nice and helped her students beyond teaching them different subjects. When she quit, we were told by the principal that a class couldn't have the same teacher for more than 4 years in a row, which is why she had to teach a different class at a different school. This was at the end of 5th grade. I was 11, I believed them, talked with my mum about it a year or 2 ago, and she immediately said that it is not a thing at all. That was a lie, and there is no such rule. She then also said that the teacher had quit her job at school because the principal and vice principal had bullied her into quitting because she helped the students too much. On our last day at school, she gave every student in her class a rose and a card with a picture of the student and a personal note, just something nice about the student, something they were good at, and that she enjoyed being our teacher. This was in 2005. I'm pretty sure I still have that note. Also, a side note about the butthole principal and vice principal, my parents had a lot of meetings with them about me because he pretty much refused to help me with my selective mutism. They said it was because they didn't know enough about selective mutism.
So my parents got a lot of information that was mostly in German and English and translated a lot of info for them from German to Norwegian and gave all the translated info and the info in English. I'm not sure if they translated that too or if they just gave it to them in English. Then at the next meeting, they said that they didn't have any or enough information about selective mutism, with the folder with all the information literally on a shelf directly behind them. I switched school in the middle of 6th grade. Alright, this one is because of me. I had a crap supply teacher called Mr. W. Mr. W was a douchebag. I have to mention for this that I am short-sighted and at the time didn't have glasses to help me. I was in year 8. This man, Mr. W, wrote on the board, World Religion Sikhism, but my short-sighted bud thought it said work religion, so I said, Sir, does that say work or world religions? And he lost it with me. He screamed his head off at me and sent me out of the classroom, where I waited for the entire rest of the lesson. This was last lesson and without telling my parents, made me stay behind. While I was there, he screamed at me more, slammed a door in my face, then returned with a massive hardback religion book, which he threw at my head. I caught the train home from school. I missed my train because of him, and my parents were really concerned because, of course, I didn't make it home. Long story short, I got out and called them. They reported him to the school, and after a long meeting with the head teacher that involved a lot more screaming, he got fired and never came back. All because of my stupid eyes. I don't know if this teacher had beef with this person or something, but man, what a weird thing to get bent out of shape over. High school Spanish teacher who used to bully all the students. They somehow found out that she faked all of her teaching qualifications. Don't know how she got the job in the first place. A guy was fired from our high school for claiming he was Hitler's son, not to mention some convictions the school was unaware of. The school only realized when some students saw an article about the guy and his convictions and claims in the leading newspaper in the state. There was this teacher that taught English to non-American kids. She started to learn their language to help, but it made it that no one in that class evolved their English in a whole school year. The other year, she got fired and almost all the kids in their class needed to repeat the same level of English class. There isn't many details available, but a teacher got fired for what I can only assume are grape allegations. Despite claims that he was being unfairly fired were given by a few students, he was fired anyway. I don't know much more about it though. She was the water polo teacher at the most prestigious boys' school in South Africa. A solid 12 out of 10, she was very kind, always willing to practice after hours, more than one boy per day. She teaches about 52 boys in her weekly roster, if I remember correctly. She had the stamina of a racehorse. Eventually, one boy could not keep up with her and blew it wide open with the pics she sends him, and others. Everything came out and she left the school. The rest is history. With a quick search, you will find it. God damn, bedded 5 boys in Cape Town while she was married? Oh man. I feel bad for her ex-husband. Mine's less depressing than most. She was so boring, no one continued her class to GCSE level. This was D&T, combination of woodwork, metalwork, textiles, and plastic work. She had a forge in one corner and a pillar drill in the other, as well as lathes and lots of other fun stuff. But she was so overbearing about health and safety beyond a reasonable level. I am aware they can be dangerous, but she'd give the same 20-minute lecture every week. I'm gonna be honest, I don't blame her for doing that same 20-minute health and safety lecture every week. Here's a little story. I had a friend who, when we were in high school, was in woodwork, and this wasn't a targeted thing or anything, but some douchebag put hot glue on the nose bit of a pair of plastic safety goggles, and then my friend so happened to be the lucky one that picked them up, put it on their face, and they have a scar across the bridge of their nose now since then. Kids are stupid, they do stupid things that can hurt themselves or each other, and when they asked the guy why he did it, he was just like, I don't know, and it's like, because you're freaking stupid! I'm 15. This happened when I was maybe 11, and that year I was a troublemaker, suspended every other week, and it got bad. I lived in another city than the school, so I had a contract. It was a get good grades, stay out of trouble, and you can go to this school, and so I did for a bit, and my bully was in my math class. I took his binder when the teacher left the room, and I started running in circles around his desk, and he took my binder, I took his,
threw it, stomped the rings, and broke them individually, and this was my way of payback for years of torment since kindergarten, and he tackled me and punched me multiple times, and when I punched him in self-defense, he flew off my chest, teacher screaming for me to get off him, and I wasn't on him. He was on me, but she assumed for some reason, and we went to the office, and I got in trouble. The English teacher yelled at me and told me to grow up and told me to stop getting into trouble and said stuff like I'd never amount to anything and that I'd end up in prison, and all I did was talk back to him. I hated him. And then the principal and all the middle school teachers had a conference with me and my mom, and all the teachers hated me except one. He taught my dad, and he was really cool with me. He let me listen to music in his class, let me do more than the other teachers did, and my dad was killed maybe even 6 months before this, and all the teachers disregarded this and said I was doing this for attention. But my family sits down, eats dinner together. Every night we talk about our days and we all get the same amount of attention and love from my mom as much as she can give us. And there's 5 kids in my family. Well, my teachers don't understand and think I'm doing these things for no reason. But it was my way of getting back at the world for my dad being double-crossed and killed by his friend, and I was kicked out of school unjustly, and months down the line, my friend calls me on FaceTime and asks the teacher who sided against me why I was kicked out of school, and they're not answering because they see the phones. After I left the school, they went through 2 lockdowns and 1 close call, and people acted crazy, and the principal was fired and got replaced by a nice old lady who used to be a sub-principal who was really nice to me. Joke's on you, Mr. Finch. That sucks about your dad, but if every teacher disliked you except for one, then it's definitely a you problem. But like you said, you were a massive troublemaker at that year. Like, I was a pretty bad troublemaker as well. I had years where I would be like every other week banned from a class or something like that. But, you know, I also admit that I was a little douchebag, at least sometimes. I'm from Argentina. In my second year of high school, my English teacher got sick and we had a substitute. It didn't last an hour just because he said that private school students were more educated in behavior than public school students. My entire classroom reprimanded her, and the next day the principal informed us that she resigned. Although she did not like certain things we said, she gave us a bit of a reason. Let's call my teacher Mr. Bean because he kind of looked like him, if you squint. More so because it's just funny to me. So Mr. Bean was your average science teacher at a glance. Old dude, balding, pretty short, just to give a basic mental image. He didn't really like teaching me all too much. He'd take any chance he could get to sit back and quite literally kick his feet up while we struggled through countless packets with no direction. After a while, he kind of became a joke among my peers, and he was universally hated. Not too bad, I hear you typing. Oh, no. Mr. Bean was a very, let's say, without assuming anything, that he had some stuff going on in his personal life that he started taking out on students. He would get increasingly unprofessional and just straight rude as the years went on. His harassment went too far one day, pushing a student of blah blah high school to threaten the safety of the school. The student had threatened to dispense justice upon the school. School administration took care of the whole situation with the student very quickly. We weren't told what happened to him, but rumors said he was expelled on the spot and put through the legal system. Now, what about Mr. Bean? He just kind of vanished one day. I was told later that he quit, aka school let him quit as opposed to being fired. Did the same thing with my band teacher years back. It was a real shame for that one. Long story short, they didn't want to pay the premium for an actually experienced band teacher. She was one of the best in the state, so to you, Miss MCG, I say thank you, but that's not the story at hand. Couple tangents there, but it's kind of nice to get stories that aren't dramatic or sad or of a promiscuous nature. Geography teacher got caught watching smut in the middle of class on the school computer. Catholic school, religion professor. Shortly after graduating, he got jailed for molesting his daughter. Another religion professor got fired for harassing boys at the school's bathroom. Multiple complained, one accused him of sexual harassment. Another religion professor would actively harass female students during class. Not sure how he didn't get fired. He would sit on their desk, touch their hair, etc. I think you can see a pattern in why I turned up atheist and hated religion class. My god, this school and their religious studies teacher is it's like Hogwarts and Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers. They're always the villain, and these guys are always molesting someone. But in all seriousness, that is absolutely awful. Terrible. In middle school, during guitar class, teacher decides the class should play password, where 2 students stand at the front of the class and try to guess the password written on the board behind them while being given clues. Guitar teacher writes, grape. but without the G, on the board and gives the clue, every man's dream, every woman's worst nightmare. He was promptly fired later that day. I said earlier kids are stupid and do stupid things. Teachers are stupid too. Teachers do stupid frickin' things that get themselves fired. One of the male teachers at my school was accused of messing around with one of his male students, sending messages, pictures, etc. Anyway, supposedly the student was failing the class and got mad at the teacher and reported him with evidence. They started keeping tabs on the guy and building an investigation. A week or so later, they arrested him after school. Turns out, the kid lied and made everything up. Fake pictures, Photoshop messages, all of it. The teacher still did like 90 days in jail, and he's basically never ever going to teach again. Well, goddamn, that is spite incarnate. That is, if I were that teacher, or if I was a witness to that teacher getting revenge on that student many years later, I knew about the context and everything, I wouldn't stop him.
Teachers, what is the greatest way a student has misinterpreted one of your assignments? Not an assignment, but a case study in an exam. Intro prac exam. The student had to do an intro health assessment interview, just rapport building and exploring the client's health. This one kid comes in and sits down and proceeds to mispronounce the condition in his case study multiple times. Not only that, but the mispronunciation was for a different type of condition that was not related to the subject at all, and actually didn't exist. And it was obvious he had not been attending classes. He also did numerous other things wrong, so ended up failing. When marks were released, I received a long email from him about how I was unfair in failing him, as he was exemplary, etc., etc. I responded politely, pointing out that he had confused the actual condition in the case with another, unrelated, non-existent condition, and that he needed to consider how he might approach a similar situation in the subsequent and more important exam. I didn't hear from him again, but he did start turning up to classes. At the end of the semester, the student had to address 3 case study scenarios and perform a specified task for each. A different marker took each case. This kid comes in, cool, calm, and confident. He comes to me for his final case, and out of 100+ odd cases, happens to pull the same one as his first assessment with me. Seriously, a 1% chance. And he proceeds to make the same pronunciation error as the first time. I stopped him and asked, "Are you sure it is condition X?" "Yes." "You are 100% sure it is that?" "Yes." "Are you sure it might not be something else?" "Absolutely sure." Okay. The student acting the case knew what I was getting at and struggled to keep a straight face. The actual condition was rheumatoid arthritis. The condition, the student identified it as hemorrhoid arthritis. How on earth do you get those things confused? I am a teacher, but this is my aunt's story. She taught a special class. The instructions said to draw a bar graph. The student had no idea what a graph was, but he drew a beautiful bar. It was a Western saloon, with double swinging doors and a long bar. The bottles were not labeled, but very clearly drawn. This was on a state-mandated test as well. She had to take a break to laugh as she wasn't allowed to say anything. That is pretty cute, but clearly the system has failed this child. I don't know how old they are. High school English teacher. I once assigned extra credit opportunities for my college-bound sophomores that included writing a 3-page short story without using the letter E. There were several other prompts and assignments, and I received a fair number of assignments. However, only one student attempted to write a story without using the letter E. She simply wrote a regular story and neglected to put the E into words where it belonged. So, HR, story, look D, a lot like this, with the TH, spat, S, and all. And yes, I had explained that the story should use words that don't contain E. During the course end test of my ESL classes, the students had to listen to a recording of a lady speaking about her books on science and metaphysics, and then answer a few questions to check their listening skills. For the first question, they had to answer, who is conducting the speech? The girls' answer, the physical box. It ended up becoming a meme among the teachers of the school. We even made a paper craft box with the all-seeing eye on it and said it was the deity of bad test answers. There was this girl who was like 18 in my ESL, English as a second language course, and she was definitely the worst student ever. By the end of each course module, there was a test. Nothing too hard, but she managed to fail it 7 consecutive times. On the 6th time, she decided to try it. Previous tests had been all blank and answered the problem. What's the question for someone's age? Her answer, what birthday happy? On the 7th try, she gets the same test.
Same questions. And her answer to the problem from before? What happy? My daughter's class was recently given an assignment. Decorate a paper turkey is something else so that the turkey doesn't get eaten on Thanksgiving. My daughter dressed it up as Santa. It looked pretty good. When I was dropping her off one day, I looked at the other posted in the hall. Someone decorated theirs as a pizza. I'm not sure if that's a good answer or not. I mean, I'm pretty sure, you don't have pizza on Thanksgiving, but I'm sure someone has, or would. Middle school teacher here. Gave the students a packet that was stapled together consisting of 5 pages, assigned only pages 3 and 4 for homework. The pages were not numbered. One student came to me the next day and told me that he couldn't do it because the pages were not numbered. I told him to just count and he would be able to find pages 3 and 4. Even his parents couldn't figure it out. It was a baffling moment for me in my teacher career. Now, I can't deny I have moments of stupidity. I have a brain fart here and there on a really simple thing that shouldn't give me any trouble, but this is on a whole different level. In high school, a girl in my politics class was assigned to do a presentation on euthanasia. Instead, she did the assignment on youth in Asia. At some point, you must have explained that, what euthanasia is. How? I'm a teacher, but this happened to a colleague of mine who teaches religion, Catholic school. He was giving a test where one of the questions was, how are we made in God's image? The student responded, we are made in God's image when a man and a woman love each other very much. The man gives the woman sperms, which need to find the egg. Many sperms die, but some make it to the egg where they rest there for 9 months and then the baby is born. Needless to say, this one made its rounds in the faculty room. I'm just picturing the teacher turning around and being like, wrong goddamn class, dipstick. Minus the goddamn, I'm pretty sure Catholics don't like to take the Lord's name in vain. I am a teacher of English as a foreign language from Hungary. My first job at this school, where all the also ran kids from the town were collected. So, first lesson at this class, and I started to talk about the English language, when all of a sudden, this guy from the back shouts in English, I am a big penis. I almost died of laughter inside, but managed to keep a straight face. Apparently, no other people in the room understood anything other than penis. And clearly, the guy wasn't sure either what he wanted to say. Now, to make it clear, you can use the verb of existence in Hungarian to express possession as well. It was quite clear that he meant to say, I have a big penis. I took the opportunity to explain the difference between the verbs be and have in English and how they correlated to their Hungarian equivalents. There was a huge laughter when they managed to put the pieces together, and the class virtually unanimously agreed that he was right the first time. It was funny as hell, I have to say, but I couldn't show that, of course. Plot twist, just this morning I saw a mugshot of the guy at the market. He is wanted by the police. Bloody hell, that is a plot twist. I once worked with a summer intern who was studying economics at a fairly exclusive university. The professor had asked them to write about some business set in Peoria. Apparently, most of them had never heard the saying, will it play in Peoria? For those outside the US, it basically means, will simple folk in the heartland understand? Usually asked of sophisticated works. They assumed Peoria was the name of a hypothetical country which colored their analysis since they could not know anything about the economy there, making it a pretty useless exercise. Apparently the professor was pretty miffed that the well-educated, well-traveled 20-somethings had never heard of Peoria, and the intern was shocked to hear that we all knew that it was a city in Illinois. I'm glad they specified that people outside of the US probably wouldn't know of it, because I certainly don't. Not a teacher, but a really funny mistake. A friend of mine was told to present a paper about Charles Darwin. When he looked up his homework at home, his handwritten D looked like a P, and so it occurred that he held a presentation about Mermon Parwin, who is an Afghan singer. I once asked my class to visit a local nature sanctuary with the instructions of finding and identifying as many native and invasive species as they could for extra credit. They were to take close-up pictures of the plants and then take a selfie with the plant in the background, so I knew they weren't just ripping pics from the internet. They were to take those pictures and put them in a simple PowerPoint and turn that in. One student submitted a PowerPoint with him standing in the hallway of his home holding up an iPad with pictures of different people on it. He took more than 50 pictures, everyone with him holding his iPad with a different person's face displayed on it. Anyone with non-white skin was identified as invasive. Anyone with white skin was native. These were just random pictures of random people. Cringe factor 1000. Make it over 9,000. How would someone lack such self-awareness and just like that? There's no way they did that and thought, yeah, this'll go down well. I'm a teacher now, but I still remember this from grade 4 when I would have been around 9 years old. The teacher split us all up into groups of 3 and each group received a different assignment task. The teacher didn't explain each project verbally, but handed cards with the task outlined onto each group. I am vague on the wording of the assignments because it was a really long time ago, but my group's task was about volume and we had to use cups to measure water and see how much we could hold using them. For some reason, the other 2 classmates in my group interpreted the assignment task from the teacher as being to drink as much water as humanly possible using cups. I remember knowing they had misinterpreted the task but stayed quiet because I thought it was funny and it sounded more interesting to see how much water they could drink than the actual task. Long story short, they both gave everything they had to the task and they both ended up projectile vomiting like crazy. I wish more people that are actually teachers were explaining this, but whatever, I guess. But this is completely unrelated. One time when I was in primary school, I had science homework to do, and my brother drank the liquid that the homework was about. So when I went to school the next morning, I literally had a note and like a diagram showing my brother drank my homework. I had to write a cause and effects paper for a college class. I couldn't think of a good topic, so I wrote my paper on the cause and effect of not having a topic for your cause and effect paper. The alternate title, because all of my essays have alt titles, was Using Rhetoric to Obscure Lack of Content. The next semester I had a similar class with a teacher I didn't like, so I did all of my papers on topics I knew would miff her. I put extra effort in to make sure that the formatting, grammar, etc. was perfect. Passing a class only because the teacher had no legitimate reason to fail me is awesome. Not gonna lie, that is pretty awesome. But this reminds me of how when I was young I had to do 100 lines in French class because me and the teacher didn't get along and I was kind of a, douchey little brat and whatnot, but they also weren't handling the situation terribly well, to be honest. Anyway, I got told to do 100 lines of any French phrase I decided to do. I was like, anything. So when they came back, there were 100 lines of Je déteste name of teacher over and over and over. In hindsight, it was utterly childish and just like a waste of time, but like they apparently found it funny, and I would eventually in my final year of high school go around to any teacher that I felt as though I had wronged and apologize for any past behavior and express appreciation for their continued patience with me, I suppose. My mother is a teacher, currently to a bunch of 10-year-olds. My favorite is the kid who had an assignment to write several antonyms. He did well except the last example, where he was supposed to write antonym for brave. He simply wrote, I can't say that, a lady's nether regions. I came to the States in 3rd grade, and one of the first assignments was to type up an essay we wrote in class, double-spaced. After a while, I was starting to get really annoyed with the double spacing format. At last, I finished and proudly returned it into my teacher, only to have her burst into laughter. Yeah, turns out double spacing isn't putting 2 spaces between every word. Preschool teacher here asked my students to tell me the first sound in dog. Almost everyone responded, woof. There was an interesting student I had called Andy from Hong Kong. He never took anything seriously and could only put very and adjectives together. Very handsome, for example. I asked Andy's class to write me a cover letter for a job. Andy's response went something like this. I handsome. I 7 centimeters long. Have good body, strong legs, nice face. I want job McDonald's. I once asked his friend, also from Hong Kong, if Andy was just as whack in Cantonese. He replied, oh hell yeah, he's extremely stupid. In my science class, we started a project last week where they had to make a poster of a cell analogy that they came up with. For example, someone made a city because the town hall is like the nucleus, a power plant is like the mitochondria, etc. One girl just could not come up with anything. I gave her a bunch of examples and then let her think about it. When I came back to check on her, she said, I'm making a sandwich. I was like, okay, but that might be kind of tough. Did you think about the parts of the sandwich that match up with cell organelles? What is the mitochondria of a sandwich? She was like, okay, I'll pick something else. I get back to her a few minutes later and I ask her, and now she's making a taco. I explained the same thing. Over the course of 2 days, while most other students started drawing, she suggested a British phone booth, a cell phone, Sonic the Hedgehog, a pizza, and a Taco Bell. For each suggestion, I said that she could do it as long as she matched up each part to an organelle, and she'd say, "Oh yeah," because she forgot that I wasn't just letting her draw random stuff. Near the end of the period on Friday, I went to her and said, "Look, let me help you. Draw an island," and I explained half of the organelles for her and even started sketching stuff out. She nodded and agreed to do that. Today, I gave her a poster board and then went to check on her. She said she didn't want to do the island and started drawing a bowling alley with random parts labeled as organelles without even thinking about the functions. I don't even care anymore. In high school English, we were reading Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. One of the central themes of the book was about class, wealth, struggle. The teacher asked us to write a weekly short essay with a viewpoint from a different class. A friend of mine, who always pays half attention, ended up turning in a paper from world history class on a semi-related subject. The funny thing is, he got the paper back with a check mark, meaning the assignment was complete. This info spread across the class, and people started turning in a few random papers to test the theory that the teacher wasn't actually reading the assignments. Before you know it, half the class started turning in random crap, everyone getting check marks back, but it got so ridiculous that people weren't even turning in coherent sentences. This went on for about nearly 2 months until one day, when the teacher was about to give the graded papers back, she noticed one of the papers wasn't quite right. She proceeded to read through it, and that's when half the class knew we were screwed. She called out the perpetrator's name and started reading out loud his writing. It literally was, "The grass is sort of green, the sky is really blue, dirt on the floor filled the ground. Ice cream tastes good." I have to admit it was really hard for some of us to control our laughter. She then looked at the next paper and then the next and the next. All of them were ridiculously off topic. She flipped, started yelling and pounding the desk with her fist. She went through and gave zeros to half the class. Thank God I turned in actual legit paper that day, as I had started getting paranoid about it when I realized too many students were doing it. You know, on one hand, this is her fault. She wasn't doing her job. This is what happens when you don't do your job right. On the other, guys, you were on easy street. She was just giving you easy passes on whatever you'd hand in, and you decided to squander it and take the mick. You're stupid. Gave grades 2 and 3 students an activity where they had to draw foods from every food group. When I went around checking, I noticed one student had some odd things in his section for grains. I asked him what he drew, and he told me lettuce and spinach. When I asked why he thought those were grains, his face went white and he said, "You mean that doesn't say greens?" It was adorable. Former Seattle High School science teacher here. I had one particular class which was very literal, and I was cracking down on homework being late. I said, "This assignment is due on Wednesday, so to get full credit, email it to me before Thursday so that I can start grading it in time before we meet again." One student, actually named Kevin, asked what time it should be emailed, so I said by midnight. He said midnight would be Thursday. Fair point, so I clarified 11:59 p.m. would work. Another kid said he'd be in Arizona, another time zone, and asked what he should do. I smiled and announced 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This should not have been a time crunch for anyone. This one girl emailed me Wednesday night at 11:21 p.m. saying, "Here it is, sorry it's early. I stayed up an extra 2 hours waiting for 11:59 p.m., but I'm just so tired and my dad wants me to go to bed. Thanks for understanding." As a teacher of a community college library course, I assigned a student the task of compiling a bibliography of books for high school students on the Middle Ages. Half of the bibliography contained books on midlife crises, empty nester, and menopause. Jesus goddamn crickety Christ, how the hell do people make these mix-ups? I had a foreign exchange student from France in my ELA class. The assignment was to write a personal narrative about an important moment in their life. Instead of reading the essays, I had my students read them aloud if they were comfortable. This was my first mistake. The student, who will be referred to as Jay, goes up to the podium to present.
Now, I need to point out that Jay did not speak often in class, and we've been working hard to get him to speak to his peers. I was so proud that he was willing to share his story. He stands up there with his essay and lets this wonderful story unfold. He proceeds to tell the class about his first time having a night emission. He said he went to school and told his friends. He was young. What happened? They suggested that he go home and touch himself. I thought for sure I was not hearing this story correctly at this point. My second mistake was not stopping the presentation. He was so soft-spoken and matter-of-fact that I had not caught on to where the story was headed. He then proceeded to tell the story of the first time he touched himself in the bathroom. My class was in tears. I had no idea what to do and sat there dumbfounded. I asked him why he would share something so personal. Jay responded that a narrative is a story, and personal means something you wouldn't want to share. Made sense to him. I ended the class with, what happens in 5th period stays in 5th period. Students asked all the time what happened in 5th period, but as far as I know, no one shared. So they shouldn't. Poor Jay. I mean, good on him for sharing it. Brave little French man, but god damn, I'm glad no one shared that story. If there were less anonymity in this, I would not share this. High schoolers, what cliques exist now? Is it still nerds, jocks, and stoners, or are there new groups that the older generations don't know about? Yeah, those still exist, but now there are sub-cliques of those and new cliques like Tumblr kids, gamers, edgy kids, furries, SJWs, those weird people that call their friends dad. Basically, anything on the internet is a clique in real life. People who call their friends dad? What does that mean? I've never heard of this. What, like they're all like, oh, daddy, oh, dad. I'm trying to like figure this out, but I can't. Is this a fetish thing? Nah, I'm in Maine. We kind of have like a caste system here where the bottom level are like the socially awkward kids. Usually freshmen, junior Tumblr, geeky type, RARXD. The next level is like the theater-ish semi-popular people. Then there's the semi-popular people, and finally the group of girls and the jock-ish guys. There still aren't any if you're British because of school uniforms stopping anyone from expressing themselves. Phones still banned in most places as well. One group of people, just people. Thank God. I graduated a year ago, but it's taken a more internet social media approach. Some people have Twitters, Finstas, etc. It's weird. Kids are weird. I could have told you that. Everything here exists at my school, except we have an extra group called AmITheA kids. Our school has this outdoor pit or amphitheater in the center of campus where all the weird kids go to sit during lunch. These are your Tumblrinos, loners, and most notably furries. Our school in the past a few years ago has actually banned furry accessories like ears and tails. You know, I kind of understand that rule. For one, I guess because schools are usually more interested in stopping occurrences of bullying happening than punishing people who actively bully others. But at the same time, some teacher probably found out it was a fetish thing and went, well, that's not allowed at school. So, in my opinion, perfectly understandable.
Keep those furries in their place.
The ultra-progressive, genderless, communist clique, they only seem to own crop tops, even the boys, and blame their bad grades and lack of success on their oppression by white males. But this is coming from a humanities school in Manhattan, so it might not represent the norm. Not really any exaggerated cliques like in the movies where it's super obvious and separated. It's all merged, to be honest. I hang out with some jocks who are also mildly geeky, and I'm a metalhead skater. The only real clique I've seen are skaters, many of whom are stoners, but I could never fit in with them. All the black kids in my school group up for some reason. Basically, you make friends with anyone and hang out with them, regardless of stereotypes. It's still crap though, because bullies exist and are more subtle. Yeah, I probably said this way too many times, but I imagine with the mass access to the internet and understanding that younger people have of it nowadays, like bullying is just on a whole different level. I was a high schooler a year ago. Thank God I've left that place. But in my school, there were the preps, the nerds, and the loners. Lots of loners. In fact, I was one of them. People who sit by themselves during lunch, people who watch from the sidelines during prom. At first, it was depressing, but I got a different view of school and life than most did. Also, the few friends I did make are stuck with me forever. Only regret is I wished I studied more in high school. I was always the kind of person who could do next to nothing and pass with C's and B's. Yeah, I wish I studied harder in high school as well. Just graduated from art school, mostly ages from 18 to 23 now, and there's more defined cliques in college I found than there was in secondary school, ages 12 to 19. In my art school, the most common stereotype was the aesthetic kids. I suppose they wear a lot of thrasher, but most have never skated, smokes all the rollies, has anxiety, has alti hairstyle, wears makeup unusually, wears the vintage store/urban outfitters trends, retro sportswear, filler, Adidas, wax jackets, loud collar blocking. Then you had your typical hard boys, chav wannabes, rich kids who dressed in tracksuits, Fred Perry who sold illegal substances and was stoned all the time, got into fights and robbed crap, hippies and new agers. Although being amongst most of the other cliques that were toxic, this person was eventually wrapped in a boho variation of the aesthetic. You have goths, gamers, cosplay community. We have one total scene queen, just one, and surprise, surprise, she ended up being a self-absorbed female dog. So many out-of-touch rich kids, so many who paid for their degrees, some hipsters, a handful of genuine artists, and so much crap. Most of the cliques in art college bonded over two common interests: illegal substances and partying. There were some who never did any illegal substances before going to art school, but eventually they did. There was a few good eggs who genuinely never drank or partied or did illegal substances and seemed to be level-headed. But honestly, our college itself thought it was better and contemporary in the art world and didn't make room for them or their style of art fit. That was the first place I felt it was clique-y. When I first went in there, I was confident, self-assured, and happy in my skin. Everyone else was anxiety-riddled and worried about not fitting in. After 3 years there in a mountain of debt, I feel I've lost my confidence and my sense of self and feel anxiety creeping back up on me. I've been battling with anxiety for years before. Everyone else seems to be more confident and assured in their ways, and there were so many crappy and fake people. This reminds me how I used to visit my friends at a university they used to attend for arts, and I was surprised when they came out of it and basically had zero contact with anyone that they spoke to at that university after the fact. And maybe I'm just dumb and weird, because wherever I go, I usually make at least one meaningful connection and someone that I speak to on a fairly regular basis, but I don't know, I guess it was weird to me. SJWs, cancerous scum of the earth, aka popular kids who wear Supreme and talk down on others. People with far right and left political beliefs only taken seriously in the 1930s. Weebs with far right and left political beliefs only taken seriously in the 1930s. Music kids, STEM kids, people who ironically use the word normie. Christians, people who only talk to other people online. Believe it or not, I dig this perspective on things. Supreme kid, anime and video game kids, like nerds, but extremely bad at school. Most people enjoy either or both of those. Just don't only talk about it. This isn't something I've really thought about before, but I'll give it a go. There are the really popular seniors and juniors who are popular and involved in just about every extracurricular activity. Then there are the band, orchestra, and choir kids, which is pretty self-explanatory. Then you have the really well-rounded people who are generally nice, get good grades, involved in a few extracurricular activities and such. And then you have the memers. We also have a very strong LGBT community in our school. Then you have the really trashy group of people who smoke a lot of weed, don't shower, try and fail to skate, and rarely go to their classes. Then you have the Tumblr subset of individuals, which is pretty self-explanatory as well. Many of these groups have bled into each other and have their own subcategories. Oddly enough, I haven't noticed any of the aesthetic kids that many other people are talking about. The athletic kids are the popular ones. The nerdy ones are mostly just the ones who look up weird crap on their computers in class. They're the memers. The art hoes who dress like they're from the 90s and are obsessed with photography. The emos who have a new hair color every week and wear band t-shirts galore. The edgy kids who make everything a joke, like the nerds, are also memers, come to think of it. Like a hardcore version of the nerds. The other category of people who don't really do much and don't fit into any category. Hi, I'm a nerd. Also, I think what's interesting about this generation is the blurred lines between groups and stereotypes. Groups seem to intertwine and be more flexible than the cardboard version of what you'd imagine it to be. I would definitely say that's to do with things like the internet and whatnot. People just have a lot more room to explore different things and spread themselves out over multiple subjects. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when being a nerd and someone who openly enjoyed video games to an extreme degree that wasn't like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed and stuff, you were a nerd. But then you had things like The Big Bang Theory came out, and that sort of made being nerdy just a regular thing. I swear to God, before The Big Bang Theory made it like kind of cool or trendy to like nerdy things, you could not enjoy these things on like a public, open basis without being called a nerd, a weirdo, or obsessive or something. Not even those anymore. In San Jose, it's all of the hype beasts that wear Ultra Boosts or Jordans or Yeezys and everything like that. Nowadays, it falls under pretty much the Tumblr indie rock groups and ghetto sporty people, SoundCloud rappers, STEM kids, which has a decent overlap with the I like to offend people community and are usually the most cringeworthy and irritable of the bunch. It's a lot more individual now than it was, though.
Girls wearing cat ears. Frickin' everywhere!
I graduated in 2013, but the groups were smart kids who were the most respected by anyone, Asians who were into Wong Fu and Kev Jumba or Niga Higa, photographers and picture-perfect people who knew every single thing about cars, preppy cheerleaders with a lot of makeup, students who sleep 24/7. That one white guy, my school had 90% Asians and 9% Latino. Students who are a little too into anime. Students who have a concerning addiction to League of Legends. Students who can skip most of their classes for track and swim meets or concerts. That student with a 4.5 GPA going to MIT. Okay, so I literally had no idea who Niga Higa was until this very moment. I didn't know it was a YouTuber. I just thought they were listing martial arts or something with really entertaining names to a more ignorant person like myself. In LA, it's the rise of the Hesh community. Basically, everyone who wears camo pants and Tyler the Creator merch or Supreme. These people are the absolute worst. Don't get me wrong, I love Tyler the Creator, but damn, I hate this community of wannabe photographers and edge types. The only true clique in the sense that they're closed off and unwelcoming are the self-proclaimed outcasts. The kids that claim no one but the other weirdos like me. They're not banded together because everyone else rejects them, but because any small difference in interests makes them turn up their nose. I think it's because they refuse to experience anything else that their social skills become stunted, and their opinion of anyone who isn't an outcast is so low. For the most part, groups intersect and people are decent to each other. In my hometown, we had the Flannel Mafia. They were around 40 kids strong within 2 to 3 grays. I don't remember how many there really were. They always wore flannel, shared stories about how they wrapped their four-wheelers or snowmobile around a tree or another object, acted like hicks on purpose, the height of their trucks equaled status, and all of them had Confederate flags in their rooms, despite us living in the North woods. It was a pretty unorganized clique, but if one of them wanted to get the others together, the others wouldn't mind. It was pretty weird, but they didn't do any real harm, so no one minded much. Pretty people with no real friends, just orbiters. Nerdy kids with dark humor. Girl groups. Meaning groups with only girls. Cool kids. People who listen to non-mainstream music and watch Netflix who think they're cool. Aesthetic kids. Instagrammers, mood, aesthetics, black and white photos, Lana Del Rey, and whatever else goes with tea. Party people. People who can only talk about parties.
The gay-straight alliance, under which the high school experienced a millennia of peace.
As a senior in high school currently, here are my thoughts. There are 2 basic distinctions. You are either A, partier, someone who is down to drink and do illegal substances, or B, someone who is against partying. The A's are then subdivided by how hard you party, and what illegal substances you do for the most part. The alcoholics versus the stoners versus the kids who huff stuff. And the B's divide themselves by seemingly random feuds and grudges, thus breaking them into groups based on what they do, like the typical groups. Same old in Midwest Wisconsin. Valley girls, jocks, stoners, nerds. Currently a junior, there are quite a few loners where I'm from, ones that usually don't fit with the society of my town. Nothing new there. There is a new really patriotic group that I have recognized these past few years, usually racist and negative towards people that don't stand for the pledge and or don't recognize military as outstanding people. Town I'm from is Mondovi, very conservative and secluded. As someone who is 17, there are more groups of kids that try to be rebellious by being offensive, screaming gay, doing illegal substances, and looking to their friends to confirm that what they did was superior to everyone else. They also listen to rap music or whatever artist seems to be at the top of Spotify. Constantly, these are the kids that always have their little earbuds in their ears during class and get in trouble for it. As for the nerds, there are no nerds. In fact, nobody uses that term anymore. There are more kids that look like troublemakers that are geniuses than the typical nerd you see in movies. Another thing, there is that group of kids that scream every single phrase they have ever heard of, such as F-boy, lid, yas, insert something. Who? I don't give AF about that teacher. There are so many I just remembered the cringe group that walk around with a loudspeaker blasting rap music.
I got some bad news for you, kid. You might want to sit down for this. If you think there are no nerds around, then you're probably the nerd.
Gamers account for a crap ton of people at my school, and country kiddos wearing country crap with their trucks, and emo squadron, which no one really likes, cheerleaders and football squad, stoners, sometimes involved with football and cheerleader squad, student council squad. All these are probably the biggest. It used to be your average high school with all the stereotypes. Now all the chill people left, and it's just judgmental preps, halfway crooks, snitches, jocks, F-boys, and a couple emos and furries, nerds spread around. Real shame, but you can't blame anything other than the school administration and the cops running around trying to arrest every kid for everything from jaywalking to cigarettes. I don't think I agree with that assessment very much. I think the issues start at home for the most part. The main cliques nowadays are vapors, some stoners, SoundCloud rappers, nerds, emos, and of course, the group that will never fade, the cool group. But now, it's more dispersed. There's more beef and a lot more gangsters. People are friends, but everyone has something to say about someone as soon as their back is turned. A lot of ravers and drinkers, too. The experience of everyone being a two-faced mother at high school. I'm a senior in high school, and this is what I've witnessed. There are the Chads, who are the athletes and work out at the gym as much as they can, and then ask nerds what the heck is going on in class. Then there are the band nerds who are literally obsessed with band and ignore their class lessons to tap their fingers on the desk while reading sheet music that they will never use later in life. Then there are the honor freaks, rich kids who are in honor or AP classes who act like they're superior above everyone else and only talk to kids who are in those higher classes. The wannabe hackers, nerdy kids who go on the school computer and act like they're trying to hack something in the mainframe, but in reality they're doing jack and just messing with the settings. The banger kids who throw bangers every weekend, obsess over them, and then once the party is over, they talk about that same party for months till another banger is thrown. Then weeaboos and cringe kids who obsess over anime, filthy frank, and iDubbbz and act like they're all edgy, when in reality, they're idiots who jump off wooden benches and shout, "I'm gay!" God damn, this one's judgmental. There's a lot of furries at my school. It's kind of awkward and cringy for the rest of us. There's a massive club and everything. I'm pretty sure this is not most high schools, though. Going to school in South Carolina, we have a clique my friends dubbed prepnecks. Kids who go mudding, hunting, and fishing. They drive massive pickup trucks, put Trump stickers and Confederate flags on everything, but they also go to church every Sunday, have really wealthy parents, and live in giant houses in the burbs. Okay, hear me out. Take away the Confederate flag and these guys sound like they'd be pretty cool. Otherwise, I don't give a crap who you vote for. I graduated in 2016, so I'm not a high schooler anymore, but the two newer cliques I noticed in school were kids who only talked about politics all day, every day with each other, and the worst clique of all, weeaboos. They were everywhere at my school. Also, they didn't shower at all. any of them. I don't know why, but all of them, every single last one, smelled like an actual dumpster. I want to say I would most definitely pick the smelly otaku over the guy or gal who just cannot turn off, you know? But I don't know. If you've got really poor hygiene and you actually smell, it would be kind of a tough choice because I hate people who do nothing but talk about politics all day, every day. And while I can definitely tolerate a smelly person for a certain amount of time, all day at school, yeah, I'd probably still pick the smelly otakus, but try and, I don't know, be informative about the benefits of regularly washing. At my high schools in the United States of America, the social hierarchy is as follows. The population is split up into cells. Each cell is run by one extremely homosexual guy, aka Homoviathan or Alpha Gay. The Homoviathan has a bunch of girls who are his best friends, and according to their social contract, he gives each girl a bunch of crap on everyone else in exchange for the ability to asexually assault them whenever he pleases. Underneath the girlfriends are the straight guys. The straight guys are kissing the Homoviathan's butt in an attempt to get with one of his constituents, and as such become part of his friend group. Finally, you have the straight guys who are not in the dating pool who exclusively hang out with others of their class. I implore you members of the LGBT community watching this video, utilize Homoviathan. Put it in the jargon. I don't care. God damn, look at that proud Homoviathan over there. I graduated high school last year, but from what I could see, smart STEM kids who kinda kept to themselves but were pretty cool. The anime kids, nothing inherently wrong with anime, but when you watch so much anime that you have to repeat senior year 3 times, nerds at my school were something like an evolution. I don't really have a better words for it. If you know, you know. You could be a nerd and still be cool. Smart or extremely antisocial. Nerds seem to be sort of the bridges between the smarter kids and the ones who weren't as academically inclined. The art students, the athletes, the hunters, and gun fanatics. Last year birthed a new division, Politipals. You had people from all branches squatting up against the other political party. There were 2 main branches of popular, the ones that were actually nice to people, and the ones who kept to their own cliques and made fun of people who were either a hyper geek or weren't part of any group. Butterflies, the kids who you'd call your average student. Gets good grades, isn't socially extra, isn't a student athlete, probably has a few extracurricular hobbies, pretty much the student who has the potential to befriend anyone except the rude branch of popular. But alas, none of these groups are necessarily mutually exclusive. Medical professionals. What was a time where a patient ignored you and almost died because of it? My dad worked for a company that was based in northern USA. The owner was Canadian and had a cabin up in Canada. He was visiting the cabin a few summers back. He had some medical issues happen and went to the hospital. They said something was wrong with his heart and he needed surgery. He called my dad because he knew my sister was a doctor and wanted a second opinion. They scheduled the surgery in Canada for a few months out. My dad called my sister, and my sister said in the USA they would never let anyone leave the hospital with his condition, and he would be in surgery that night. She said, he needs surgery now. Well, he left the hospital, and a few days later, he was dead. It was a sad I told you so. Okay, the patient in this story is a horse, and in order to fully understand this story, there are a few things about the horse that you have to know. Horses have something in their bodies called a guttural pouch. This warms oxygen that is on its way to the brain. There is a blood vessel that is under the guttural pouch, and sometimes horses can get a fungus in the guttural pouch that slowly erodes the blood vessel, causing nosebleeds. The vessel will rupture, heal, and the cycle goes on until one day it ruptures and the horse bleeds out. This condition is called guttural pouch mycosis. It is diagnosed via endoscopy and is deadly if left untreated. Now, I'm in no way a medical professional, but heard this story from an equine vet. She was called out to a farm because a horse was experiencing repeated nosebleeds. She was pretty positive that the horse had guttural pouch mycosis, and she and the owner decided that the vet would scope the horse. She went to get the scope, and when she got back, the owner had changed their mind. She didn't want the horse scoped. The vet left. She was never told definitively that the horse died, but the next time she went to the farm, that horse was nowhere to be seen. Aw man, horses are like my second favorite animal that I regularly see. Equine creatures are just cool, but then again, I just got back from the safari park and I'm kind of vibing with sea lions right now. Sea lions are dope. I'm a vet tech, so my problems are my clients, not my patients. Patients just do what they're gonna do. But boy, do we have a problem with client compliance. You'd be amazed how many times we get something to this effect. Dog comes in very sick. Through testing, we find out the dog has Addison's, heart failure, thyroid disease, something else that is a lifelong disease that can only be treated with lifelong medication, not cured. We explain all of this, and possibly after an expensive hospital stay, we send owner home with a month's worth of medication. Several months go by, and O calls upset that their dog is sick again. Yeah, you haven't picked up any heart medication in 5 months. Have you gotten it at another clinic? No. Yeah, no, come in, and thanks for messing up everything. Or 2 years ago, you came in for your regular exam. We talked to you about preventing heartworm disease. You said our prevention is poison and you'd use a safer, more holistic method, and now your dog is here coughing and weak. Hello, heartworms. No, your essence of lavender, your rosemary, your coconut oil, your apple cider vinegar, and every other bit of bullcrap you can throw at me doesn't kill heartworms. Your dog isn't a raw chicken. Stop marinating him, for God's sake. Also, gotta love the very classic, I gave him his antibiotics, pain meds and steroids for 2 days and he got better, so I stopped. Now he's worse again, and I cannot stress enough the importance of restricting activity after your pet has surgery. Yes, she feels good, enough to run around the yard maybe. That's because she's on pain medication. That does not change the fact that we just removed multiple organs out of her belly hours ago. And now you're bringing her in with her intestines swinging in the breeze and blood everywhere. Thanks for nothing, dumb butt. Just do what we tell you. I swear to God, so many lives and a bunch of heartache and money could be saved if people just did what we tell them to do. You're paying us money for our opinion. You're taking the time out of your day to come sit down and talk with us, all just to go, well, yeah, but I read this on Google, or, well, my dog is too smart to do something like that. I know my dog better than you. It's baffling. Yes, you do know your dog better than me, but I know dogs in general better than you, and I can say you'd be hard-pressed to find a dog that won't do some stupid crap in their life because they're a dog. Your dog is not so smart that he won't screw his sister, eat a bunch of grapes, or rip apart his bandages. It is your job to watch over them and ensure they don't do those things. So just do what we frickin' tell you to do, Christ's sake. It sounds like this person needed to vent, but also this all sounds like, I'm guessing they're not being specific. It sounds like they're talking about a single individual. Medical student here. Last summer I was doing ER practice and a guy came in with a massively swollen leg, which was deep vein thrombosis, a clot in your leg vein that can dislodge and travel straight to your lungs and kill you. That same guy came in some months prior with the same condition and was explicitly told that if his leg hurts again and starts to swell, to sit down and not walk. Apparently this time the guy came, he walked to the ER, like 20 minutes of walking. He didn't die though. I guarantee if it's an older gentleman, they probably just completely disregarded that information that you told them and went, I'll walk it off. And when that didn't work, then they said, okay, maybe I should go to the hospital. Diabetic patient who broke his ankle left the cast on for 6 months because he didn't want to bother coming back to the hospital. Our front bubble stunk of rotting flesh. It's a fairly large room and the cast was still on. We move him to another area. I'm hovering over ortho as he is taking the lower part of the cast off. On the outside, on the medical aspect of his ankle, you could see there was some fluid from the inside that stained the cast, this nasty color. When the cast popped off, it looked like zombie flesh, oozy, gangrenous, stunk like death. The funniest part about it is when the ortho resident is talking to him about what the plan is going to be, a fly kept buzzing around and landing on his exposed, nasty leg. I am not a medical professional, but one time my grandpa had a surgery and was told not to smoke for a while, and when he got home, he smoked and burst an artery and bled all over the back seat of my dad's car. That sounds terrifying. Imagine taking a puff of a cigarette and then just gush, blood everywhere. Had a very drunk, less than cooperative older gentleman come into the trauma ICU after getting into a fight with his lady friend, who then stabbed him in the neck with a screwdriver. She luckily missed his airway, but nicked a large vessel. He had a hematoma forming on the side of his throat that was growing quickly and endangering his breathing. Wheezing and stridor could be heard with every breath, and he was doing a good bit of bleeding. He needed surgery to repair the vessel and decompress the hematoma. Dude was so wasted and uncooperative that he blatantly refused and kept trying to leave. The doctors were scrambling to get paperwork in order to do the procedure with an emergency consent, as the patient was obviously impaired. Patient frantically motions for me to come to his bedside. He's coughing and sputtering. I look him straight in the eyes after assessing to make sure he was still maintaining good oxygen saturation and say, "You can't breathe." He nods frantically. "Well, that's a shame because you sent away the surgeon that was going to fix that. You want me to go get him?" More frantic nods. "You going to let him do the surgery and fix your throat this time?" Continued frantic nods. I call over my shoulder to the now group of OR personnel discussing the logistics of keeping the operation legal. He consents. They jump and literally run with his butt to surgery. Fixed him up. He spent a couple days on a breathing machine just to prevent his throat from swelling closed post-op. If we would have let him walk out, he would have suffocated in the car park. I have not been in the medical field for long, 6 months at most, but have seen many people who come in for rehab after having a heart attack who ignore their fluid restriction. I've seen this turn into a fatal situation 3 times already. Drinking water to death, who would have thunk it? And that is where the saying everything in moderation comes from. Because yes, you can in fact drown yourself to death internally by drinking too much water, apparently. And no, don't worry, it would have to be just an insane amount of water, like, I don't know, 50 liters or something. Every opiate addict that refuses to go to the hospital after you give them naloxone to reverse their overdose, they regain consciousness and refuse transport, and we explain that the naloxone will wear off and they will be right where they started. They still refuse care. We get back in the rig, drive around the block, and wait for 911 to be called again. My own experience with doctors is that, because I hate every medical procedure, I just tell them that no painkillers, nothing. Dentists always start drilling and pulling right away. My tongue needed surgery, so they just cut it, and I took no painkillers. They told me that I might be the easiest patient ever. No need for painkillers, just do what you gotta do and we can get out fast. Actually, I have a minor, nowhere near death one myself. Needed to have an abdominal ultrasound, told not to use the bathroom for however long beforehand, but it was mid-morning and I woke up needing to go. I told myself I'd drink a bunch and I'd fill up again fast. Nope, had to sit in the waiting room for hours until I was full enough to be good. Not a doctor, but here's what happened to me. My mother is an anti-vaxxer and generally against medical intervention. I didn't get my vitamin K shot as a baby, and I've never been vaccinated for anything. At around 5, I was being an idiot kid and playing around with old bamboo sticks. I liked to dip them into this nasty bucket of water we had that had been rotting in the backyard forever and fling it around to see the droplets in the air. We later found out that a neighbor kid had used it as a toilet at least once. I came down with something horrible that probably almost killed me. Very, very high fever, lethargy, nausea, and little red spots covering my entire body. I don't remember much from that time, but I remember how awful it was. My parents assumed that it was chickenpox and decided not to take me to a doctor because it would strengthen my immune system. I was actually fine eventually, but it did definitely feel like I was going to die at the time. Fast forward to age 13, I actually got the chickenpox and luckily fairly mild, but this left the question of the mystery illness's identity. I've done some Googling and my best guess is typhoid, but I have no clue really. I'll be 18 soon and I'll be getting vaccinated as soon as I can. I don't understand even at an early age what your fixation might have been with that apparent poop bucket. My dad is a veterinarian. My clinic calls them patients, their owner, clients. We had a dog come in with strychnine poisoning. You start convulsing and any stimulus, no matter how small, makes it worse. The very same convulsions cause a chain reaction and eventually spreads to every muscle in your body. You die from exhaustion, or when the neural pathways that control breathing stop working, and it is a painful way to die. We save this dog, miraculously. We tell the owner to put the poison somewhere where the dog can't get it. Dog comes back in later, same symptoms, same poisoning. We save it, somehow, again. Owner promises and swears it will be gone this time. Nope. Third time is the charm. Dog is saved yet again. At this point, the dog really isn't a dog anymore. Might as well be a potato at this point. It can barely move. Owner says that they can't lose the dog or bear to see it in pain. The poison will be disposed of. Yeah, no, the fourth iteration of the poisoning killed it. You saved it the first 3 times. Why was this time different? I feel really bad for that dog. A patient who had a spinal decompression and fusion procedure was recommended to continue using a walker when ambulating and also to arrange for personal assistance at home. Decided she was too good for help and a walker is for the disabled. Fell out of bed, a nail from the hardware punctured into the spinal nerve. She was readmitted to the hospital and is now paraplegic. From the initial need for a walker, the patient now needs to be assessed for a wheelchair. The patient didn't die, but nevertheless, a severe consequence. I don't know why this kind of reminds me of how I was taking the pictures off the wall on a narrow stairway when we were moving furniture, and they were like, "Why are you taking the pictures off the walls?" And I was like, "Because I'm being careful. I don't want us to hit them and for them to fall down." And they were like, "No, don't worry, we'll be careful." It's like, no, you don't understand. Me being careful is taking the pictures off the wall. Man, though, that is some unfortunate luck, and I feel really awful for that patient. Like, that is just a result of hubris. Patient with one leg, instructed not to get up without assistance. Bed alarm in place. Bed alarm sounded. We run in there just in time to see him up. He says, "I wanted to see if I could walk without my prosthesis." So basically, he tried to walk with one leg. Didn't work. Not me, but my dad is a cardiac nurse. This is probably my favorite story from him, and yes, I feel awful saying that. Anyways, you know how smoking is bad for your lungs? It's also really bad for your heart. It causes buildup in your arteries that can cause heart attacks or strokes. My dad performs surgeries on way too many smokers and sees some of them repeatedly. My dad, the other nurses, and every doctor will tell them they will be back if they don't quit smoking. But, of course, they don't. Now, for the part that is actually why it's my favorite. My dad is obese and has never denied it. One time, while having the stop smoking talk with a patient, he got super offended and told my dad that being obese was bad for his heart and blah blah. My dad's response, "I can lose weight. You can't lose stupid." Guy got stabbed in the arm with a knife, refused a tetanus shot, came back with full-blown tetanus, arching his back, clenching his jaw, straight to the ICU. Had a patient who had just gotten a below-knee amputation. We gave him the prosthesis shortly after surgery, as soon as surgeons signed off, and told him several times to take it easy. He was very excited and we knew he was not going to listen. To stress the issue, we had the owner of the company and several co-workers who are also amputees talk to the patient. Being a new amputee, the limb goes through a lot of changes and is still healing. After he took his new leg home, we hadn't heard from him in a few weeks. He even cancelled his follow-up appointment since he was doing great. A week after that, one of our co-workers calls us and tells us that he was at the surgeon's office, just stopping by to say hi and bring them breakfast, and saw said patient waiting to be seen since his limb was scabbed over, with several lesions and extremely discolored. After asking what happened, he told her that he was feeling so good with the prosthesis, he decided to run a marathon and Tough Mudder. He ended up getting a major infection due to the mud and is extremely lucky that he did not need a revision, making him an above-knee amputee. For anyone who doesn't know what Tough Mudder is, I don't know if it's a UK thing exclusively, but it's basically a mud run. That's it, really. It's just lots and lots of mud. The patient was me and the medical professional was my aunt in this situation. Isn't blood related to me, but she's basically family. I can't remember the actual medical term for it, but I call it deadly asthma. This happened last year, which makes it the second time I've had it. First time I had to go to the ER at Boston Children's because no one could figure out what was wrong with me and I was getting increasingly worse. Basically, the symptoms are close to the symptoms of walking pneumonia. This time that I got it, I was told to take my neb treatment 3 times a day and take some heavy meds. Now, I have had asthma my entire life. I tend to not take my rescue inhaler if I feel like I can get through an attack. I get 2 to 5 attacks a day, so yeah, I'm pretty severe. I take Symbicort, but had basically lost my inhaler and never really looked for it, so I stopped taking it. It pretty much allows me to not even have a single attack every day, which is awesome. Being a teenager, I am I'm kinda irresponsible with my own well-being, so I stupidly didn't do what I was told. I ended up not taking the nebs because they make me sick, make my tremors worse, and make me unable to walk normally for a couple of hours. Well, let's just say at night I was suffocating and close to just not breathing at all, but still said I'm fine, which more or less was because I was delirious. I was driven to my pediatrician's office and they put me on the neb. They said I could have crashed, medical term, not car crash, and died if my mom waited to drive me there. My oxygen levels were low, and I was about to pass out because I couldn't breathe. My aunt gave me a good scolding, told me she'd send me to the ER if I didn't take my neb treatment, so I followed her orders that time. Took me another 2 to 3 weeks to fully recover and had to be put on even more meds. I think sometimes I underestimate the dangers of my condition because I go through it so much. Let this all be a lesson to, not do that again. In this story, it wasn't the patient that ignored the warning, but the hospital staff. This isn't my story, but a story from my professor that ultimately led to him stop practicing and start teaching. My professor has a heart of gold, just the most genuine man you could ever meet. He works in an adolescent psych ward. Well, one kid comes through and they really bond. He spoke about him with such a big smile. You can tell he really cared for him. He loved this kid, but he notices something is off. He speaks with the staff on the unit and asks them to make sure he is on self-deletion watch. His gut is telling him the kid is planning something. Well, he was right. The staff didn't check in at all until the next morning. The kid had managed to delete himself. It just completely broke my poor professor, shattered him personally and professionally. It's such a terrible story to hear because it was so preventable, but no one else decided to care. As for me, well, I've had patients completely ruin surgeries from just not listening. One guy got a spinal fusion surgery. Very painful. One thing you can't do is twist your back, so I'm still really new, bright-eyed and hopeful, and I go see this patient. I introduce myself and ask him how he is. He tells me that he's in 10 out of 10 pain sometimes and he can't figure out why. I try to be helpful, ask him what he's doing when he's in pain. Well, instead of just telling me, he frickin' shows me, grabs the bed rails and twists like he was trying to snap his spine. He's screaming and I'm horrified and kind of yelling at him to stop. We get the situation under control. I go back and explain all of his precautions again. He tells me to go screw myself. If he's in pain, I'm not doing my job. Well, he was discharged AMA and he ended up ruining his surgery. Hope he enjoys his excruciating back pain. That's really sad about the kid, but weirdly enough, I actually met someone the other day who said they had a fused spine. Be me, ER doctor. Sir, there is a large tumor in your spine pushing on your cord. That's why you can barely move. I've already spoken to our spine surgeon. You're going to go directly to the OR. Patient says, I'm a tough son of a gun and I don't need no surgery. 30 minutes of me screaming at him later. For the love of God, I promise I know what I'm talking about. If you don't get surgery, you will be a quad. The patient simply retorts, screw you, I'm going home. Patient became a quad. Wife sent me a very long apology letter. Be me again, sir. One of your cardiac enzymes has come back elevated. I think you are having a heart attack. I've already spoken with the cardiologist and we are going to get you over to the cath lab now. The patient's response?
Bro, I'm in town for Comic-Con and I am not missing it. I'll come back if it gets worse.
30 minutes of me screaming at him. For the love of God, I know what I'm talking about. Pretty please with frickin' sugar on top. Stay! The patient uncaringly replies,
Gotta get to the con. My favorite artist is on at 4.
Dude came back in cardiac arrest. Much of my job is to mess up Darwinian evolution. Weirdly enough, I have also thought about that in terms of doctors and how, like, you know, people with genuine hereditary issues are, like, the most in need of them. And that has got me thinking about the friend that told me that every single male in his family line has, like, had a heart attack around their 30s. Historians, what is the strangest chain of events you have studied? Perhaps when a tiny Spanish town wanted to make a war against Napoleon and his allies, and so declared war on Denmark. Only they forgot they had declared war on Denmark, and so did Denmark. And then in the 1980s, someone was going through records in, like, the library or something, and discovered, oh crap, we never actually made peace with Denmark. And so in the 80s, they finally made peace from their war against Napoleon in the early 1800s. Or maybe
maybe it's the tale of the army of Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein was incredibly loyal to the Holy Roman Emperor, so of course when the Emperor sends out a call for troops, the 80-man army of Liechtenstein volunteered. They went down to Italy and promptly saw almost none of the actual war. Instead, they hung out with an Italian baker a lot. When the war was over and they were being recalled home, they asked if they could bring said baker home with them. Their liege said yes, so they brought him back with them, and he served faithfully in the army until his death by natural causes. That's the story of how an 80-man army went off to fight a war and returned with 81 men. I would also rather hang out with a rad baker than go to war. But apparently that baker was then like, I'd rather go to war than be a baker. I'm Australian, and in the latter part of 1932, a wildlife management program happened and military action had to take place. So on the 2nd of November, war was declared on the emus. Locals attempted to herd the emus into an ambush. However, the birds split into small groups and ran so that they were difficult targets. On the 4th of November, Major Meredith had prepared for an ambush near a local dam, and over 1,000 emus were spotted heading towards their position. This time, they waited until the birds were at point-blank range before opening fire. By the 8th of November, only 6 days into the war, 2,500 rounds of ammunition had been fired. Considering so many shots were fired, the emu casualties were not great. The number of birds killed is unclear. One account claims just 50 birds, but other accounts range from 200 to 500. So a bunch of trained soldiers with machine guns lost a war against large, flightless birds. The Emu War. It's old news to me personally, but if you didn't know about that, it's kind of interesting. Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated in 1914 led to 9/11. The Archduke's assassination, of course, leads directly to the outbreak of World War I, which in turn results in the 1917 Russian Revolution, where Lenin and the Bolsheviks seize power in Russia and form the Soviet Union. Fast forward to the late 1970s, when the Soviets invade Afghanistan. In true Cold War fashion, the Americans help local groups to fight back and drive out the Soviets. One such individual who fought along in such groups, Osama bin Laden. A regiment in the Polish army adopted a bear after its separation with its mother, and named it Wojtek. This bear carried artillery rounds to the howitzer cannons, smoked cigarettes, and drank vodka with the men. Wojtek was considered a soldier by the Polish government and given pay for its duty. The regiment even made a new patch or logo of the bear carrying an artillery shell. Wojtek, I love Wojtek. The story of Wojtek's cool as hell. In World War II in the Pacific Theater, an American airplane was shot down by Japanese fire. There was only 9 survivors, and 8 of them were captured by the Japanese, while 1 of them escaped to sea. The 8 men who were captured by the Japanese were all tortured and killed in horrible ways, all of them dying painful and drawn-out deaths. The one who escaped almost died himself, as he was at sea for several days in a life raft with few supplies. Eventually, though, he was rescued by American forces and made a full recovery. He continued to fight in the war and survived through the rest of the conflict, and after the war he married and had several children. That man's name was George Herbert Walker Bush. Is there anyone else besides the Bushes that, had a child that later went on to also become president? In Monza, Italy, King Umberto I went to a small restaurant for dinner, accompanied by his aide-de-camp, General Emilio Ponzia Vaglia. When the owner took King Umberto's order, the king noticed that he and the restaurant owner were virtually doubles, in face and in build. Both men began discussing the striking resemblance between each other and found many more similarities. Both men were born on the same day of the same year, March 14th, 1844. Both men had been born in the same town. Both men married a woman with the same name, Margherita. The restaurateur opened his restaurant on the same day that King Umberto was crowned King of Italy, and on the 29th of July, 1900, King Umberto was informed that the restaurateur had died that day in a mysterious shooting accident, and as he expressed his regret, he was then assassinated by an anarchist in the crowd. What the actual hell? Is this like a Fear and Hunger friggin' mimic or something like that? Doppelganger? And yes, for those of you who know, I've got into the video games Fear and Hunger, and they are super good. I'm playing Terminus as we speak. But anyway, that is too many coincidences. I need to look this up. World War I, more accurately, the descent into it. After the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, there were several attempts by ambassadors and diplomats to make peace, but obviously all failed. Starting with the
assassination itself that occurred after several failed attempts earlier in the day, Gavrilo Princip's encounter with the Archduke only happens because the driver of the Archduke's vehicle takes a wrong turn onto the street where Princip is sitting outside a diner. Days after, a meeting between the ambassador from Austria-Hungary and from Russia to Serbia, intended to draft an agreement to prevent or limit military action, ends prematurely when the Russian ambassador has a heart attack and dies. Perhaps the war could have been limited to a German-backed Austria-Hungary against Serbia if it was known that no Serbian territory would have been annexed. If that was clear, Russia might not have supported her Serbian allies, but because the Russian ambassador to Serbia was dead, the only ambassador communicating with Russia was from Germany, and he doesn't know that Austria-Hungary wouldn't annex any territory. And so, Russia's full support is behind Serbia, as Germany's is behind Austria-Hungary. This means that, once Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, Germany has no choice but to do the same to Serbia's allies, Russia, France, and Belgium. And all three of those countries' allies return the favor unto Germany and Austria-Hungary. And the Ottoman Empire wakes up and joins on Germany's side, and so on. One wrong turn down a city street gets a ruler shot and killed, one peace negotiation falls apart by a chance heart attack, and one failure in communication drags two entire networks of alliances into war, regardless of whether or not any given country has any real stake in the inciting conflict. Not a historian, just a huge history nerd, but this is one of my favorite things to talk about. Let me tell you about the William D. Porter, a warship commissioned in 1943. It was mainly known for being the biggest dumpster fire in the history of oceanic warfare. Originally, it met up with the battleship Iowa, which carried FDR, who was going to Iran and Cairo for a summit between Allied leadership. The Porter's job was to escort the Iowa and ensure that no attack would befall on the president. When leaving port in Norfolk, someone didn't raise the anchor up all the way, which tore off a neighboring ship's railing and lifeboat mounts. The next day, a live depth charge went overboard and exploded, freaking out everyone aboard the Iowa. 2 days later, FDR wanted to see how well the Iowa can defend itself against planes, so the Iowa released a number of balloons to shoot at. Some drifted into the space of the Porter and, in a quest of redemption, shot the balloons down with no issue, after which all of the escort ships decided to do a drill with their torpedoes. The Porter tested, but somewhere launched a live torpedo straight towards the Iowa. The Porter then tried to tell the Iowa, "We may have shot a frickin' torpedo at you, move." But the whole escort commanded radio silence, so they tried using a signal lamp. But the operator told them that the Porter was just backing up, so rather than being held for high treason via incompetence, they broke radio silence and disaster was averted. It was at that point the Iowa told the Porter and its crew to F off back home. Eventually, the crew faced an inquiry over the incident and then were exiled to the Aleutian Islands, where everything went relatively well until a crew member came back to the ship, drunk off his butt, and wanted to play with the guns. The shot landed in the base commander's front lawn while hosting a party for other officers and their wives. Their tale ends during the Battle of Okinawa, where they were tasked with keeping kamikazes away from the bigger ships. One kamikaze plane darted straight towards the Porter and was shot down before the plane had reached the ship. Unfortunately, the plane was moving so quickly, when it hit the water, it carried just enough to the bottom of the Porter, detonated with enough force to take it out of the water and sink. It may not be weird, but my god, it's hilarious. I'm no historian, but my dad is. He made me watch a documentary about the Revolutionary War and the events that led to it for summer homework. Apparently, a younger officer was friends with a native chief called Half King, who was part of a tribe alliance allied with the British. The young officer and Half King were traveling through land as they walked into a group of Frenchies. Half King, eager to show his strength to the Brits, killed them all, but the Frenchies turned out to be an ambassador and/or dignitary. They knew that this would not go unanswered, so they built a small fort, but could not build the defenses enough, so they were overtaken by the French. The French made the young officer sign the treaty on behalf of England, which was problematic because he struggled with French. He signed it, and the French waved it in England's face because it disgraced them. They couldn't let this go unanswered, so they had a war. The French and Indian War, which put the colonies in debt and thus increased taxes, which led to the revolution. The craziest thing that caught me by surprise was that the young British officer in the beginning was George frickin' Washington. So the general who ended the American Revolution was the same guy
guy who made the mess. I guess if you start something, you probably should finish it. Okay, this guy blames George Washington, but is no one over here looking at Half King covered in blood and frog's legs and the little ponytails that I think the French used to wear in the 1800s? I don't know, I'm just going off of what I saw in The Duelists, which is a really good movie. Go watch that film. It's Ridley Scott's directorial debut. Smuggler's arm shark incident. In the 1930s, a large tiger shark was caught in Sydney and put into a public aquarium at Coogee Beach. The shark gets sick and a few days later vomits up a human arm while people are watching. The arm has a tattoo that the police are able to identify as a local gangster who is missing. The police track down his associates and get a confession and solve the case. Does anyone else remember that cartoon, Kenny the Shark? In 1949, the brand new U.S. Air Force orders the design and building of a supersonic jet bomber to be able to outspeed and outmaneuver Soviet air defenses and fighters. Okay, that's doable. Just one problem. The plane will be cruising supersonically between altitudes of 50,000 and 70,000 feet. If a person was to eject with a normal ejection seat and parachute, there's no oxygen and the air temperature is a balmy minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is why jets are pressurized. The pilots and crew would promptly die by a combination of oxygen starvation and freezing. So the manufacturer comes up with a set of individual escape capsules for the crew with an integrated oxygen and pressurization system. Great! Except no one has ever done escape capsules on a US aircraft before. It has to be tested on something else before a human goes for a ride. Something else being alive at the time of the test and remaining so for the duration. Pilots have strict physical standards, and the US Air Force actually had a chimp colony for use in research and testing. Problem solved. Or not. Non-pilot air crew have much less strict physical standards and can be a bit, well, hefty. The engineers have to find a heavier animal. Some genius whose name is lost to us came up with the idea of using juvenile American black bears to simulate the heavy weights of humans. Not surprisingly, a bear is going to have rather strong opinions about being taken out to a desert, shoved into a small capsule, and ejected from an aircraft traveling at Mach 2. The answer, of course, is to sedate the bear before they take their ride. Turns out, much like people, not every bear responds to sedation the same way. One young bear, upon waking up while being loaded into the escape capsule and surrounded by humans, got understandably ticked off and attacked one of the engineers. Despite the setback, the escape capsule worked and the B-58 saw active service from 1960 to 1970. Modern heavy industry due to one lousy deal. Treaty of Versailles ends World War I. Germany loses a great deal of its iron-producing regions in the agreement, but is left with a great deal of magnesium-producing regions. Magnesium is brittle and cannot be forged through impact like iron, so Germany develops the 5, 15, and 30-ton presses. Cue World War II. Allies shoot down German planes and see single, large stamped parts which improve strength drastically, while reducing weight, while Allies use smaller pieces bolted together. The US takes the 5,000 and 15,000 ton presses, while the USSR takes the 30,000 ton as war reparations. Improvements are made, large industrial parts are manufactured faster, cheaper, and stronger, triggering massive production of aircrafts, turbines, space shuttles. The Mester 50,000 ton press in Cleveland is still considered part of national security. Was built in the 50s under the heavy press program, and in 2008, $100 million was spent refurbishing it as it is that important. In 790, when the Viking Age began, Vikings set out to pillage and conquer England. They were very successful, but ultimately failed, except that in 911, the Duchy of Normandy was founded by a Viking named Rollo, whose grandson is William the Conqueror, technically still a Viking. Conquered England, and one of Rollo's daughters, I think, was married to the Duke of Aquitaine, which gave future English kings, whom were descendants of William and therefore Rollo, a claim on Aquitaine, half of France. So the Vikings came from a village in Scandinavia, terrorized England for a long time, only for a couple of Vikings and Rollo to get baptized and get some land right next to England and his descendants to conquer England and start of the 100 Years' War. In hindsight, the raid of Linden's Fair ended in a 100 Years' War and bitter rivalry between the English and the French in a claim to the French throne, which ended only in the French Revolution, almost exactly 100 years later later after the raid of Linden's Fair. I don't know what's going on with the person that wrote this, but it feels like they were drinking while they were writing this and just progressively getting worse and worse at writing and spelling as they went. It's honestly frustrating. But anywho,
Bloody Scandinavians, barbarians, the lot of them invading my country. Whew, not nearly as good as the Romans that at least had the decency to design our roads. Of course, they enslaved us and made us build them, but what you gonna do?
fairly similar to the Borneo cat drop in the 1940s, Mao Zedong implemented the Four Pests campaign. It was an event wherein the killing of typical agricultural pests earned rewards. At least they believed they were pests. The famines of China were caused by locusts and weevils, which were being eaten by the sparrows, mice, and frogs that the campaign advocated to be killed. Children would go into the field and return with strings of dead birds and mice killed by stones. Some regiments were introduced as well to monitor the presence of the pests, so that those who had realized the reverse logic would be fined for their misconduct. Another contribution to the reason why millions of people have died under communism. Senator Charles Sumner, making a speech on the U.S. Senate floor on May 19, 1856, denouncing slave power and insulted some U.S. senators, including Senator Andrew Butler. Senator Butler's nephew, U.S. Representative Preston Brooks, was so angry over the speech that he went into Sumner's office and nearly beat him to death with a cane on May 22, 1856. Then a couple of congressmen and senators responded by challenging Brooks to a duel. The irony is that Brooks died 7 months later from the coup after he attacked Sumner, while Sumner lived on as a senator for another 18 years. Have you heard of the Battle of Karanshabesh, where the Austrian army lost a battle to itself? The Austrians were looking to stop the Ottomans from capturing the town of Karanshabesh and thus marched into the area. Some hussar scouts ahead of the army ran into some migrating Romani people who sold them some schnapps. When the cavalry were getting nice and drunk, the infantry ran into them and demanded to be given some alcohol. The cavalry refused, and during the ensuing argument, someone fired a shot. During the shootout between friendly cavalry and infantry, some people began shouting, "Torci, torci!" which set off a huge panic in the drunken ranks of the hussars. As the drunken cavalries are riding to their camp, the soldiers in the camp are panicking and shooting at whatever shadows are riding past them. A camp commander in the meantime also ordered a friggin' artillery salvo at the cavalry. The army is quickly dissolving into a mass of rooting men. The officers tried to stop the panic, but they are shouting halt in German, and due to the multi-ethnic nature of the Austrian army, the orders were misheard as cries of Allah by Serbian, Hungarian, and Italian soldiers. All in all, the Austrian army lost several hundred men and had to retreat, while the Ottomans easily took Karanshabesh. And then I'm sure they took plenty of slaves and castrated them all, because that's what the Ottomans used to do. The Arab slave trade was frickin' brutal. Also, sorry if I mispronounced anything. The most interesting, at least to me, research I've done was when I was doing research on late medieval to early modern superstitions and the supernatural. I had to read a lot of almanacs from the 16th to 17th century. Almanacs are basically small booklets with a lot of varied information. They will typically also contain a history of the most important events of the past year. What's so interesting about this is that you'll read stories such as the city of Constantinople was attacked by a dragon, the fire claimed some casualties, but the horses were saved by the grace of God. While at first sight this just seems like a made-up story that nobody could ever believe to most of us, it becomes so much more relatable when you think about it from the perspective of the average European in late medieval Europe. The thing about the late medieval worldview in Western Europe was that it almost entirely revolved around Christianity. The world was seen as a duality. So while there was obviously some neutral scenery, almost every event and every living thing was seen as an expression from either God or the devil. Generally, humans were seen as divine and owning a soul, whereas animals could be anything. What it usually boils down to is that they would be seen as divine if they were in some way a part of a biblical story regarding God, whereas they would be considered demonical if they were referenced in a story about Lucifer. Meanwhile, animals that weren't mentioned in the Bible were seen as neither possessing a soul nor being an expression of the devil, basically neutral. The question whether black people possessed a soul and were thus fully human and divine was a genuine theological question to Western Europeans at that time, seeing as they weren't mentioned specifically in the Bible. At least in the mind of late medieval Europeans, they weren't mentioned specifically, and it wasn't clear whether they were a part of the same divine creation like they were. So, in this case specifically, a dragon, which referenced the biblical snake, was the manifestation of the devil, while the horses surviving was the manifestation of God. What struck me the most about this is that so many things about medieval times are so completely foreign to us until you try to think about it from their worldview. When your world isn't understood through our current scientific interpretations, but instead is completely doused in this duality, stories like these become so much more believable and relatable. What?
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.